sponsor. Representative Driscoll, Leader Driscoll, you're recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, Chair Leak. I don't have much to ask, but I'm curious about the legislative intent with respect to assignment of benefits. Is the intent for the repeal of assignment of benefits meant to be retroactive, or is it meant to be put effective upon policy renewal after January 1st, 2023, similar to the attorney's fee rights for homeowners?
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not intended to be retroactive.
Are there further questions of the sponsor? Representative Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What, if any, subsidies are available to limit or altogether eliminate rate increases for Floridians on fixed income, such as retirees or disabled veterans?
Representative Leak, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are no subsidies in this bill.
Representative Cassell, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I want to turn your attention to the arbitration portion of this bill. The hope is we have lots of litigation, and our goal is to take that lots of litigation and put it into alternative dispute resolutions through arbitration. Who will monitor or handle those arbitration matters?
Representative Lee.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill changed the current process where OIR monitors that.
Representative Cassell.
With regards to citizens specifically, OIR has approved, thank you, Mr. Speaker. With regards to citizens approved form that has already been approved by OIR, it's my understanding that DOA is actually going to be hearing these additional arbitration cases. Are you familiar with that?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill doesn't address that.
Representative Cassell, further questions? Representative Cassell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the event that these cases go to DOA, does this bill provide additional funding for DOA to handle these arbitrations?
Representative, I don't believe that the bill does that, but if Representative Leak wants to comment on that, but I think the hypothetical may have a presumption that's not accurate. Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's a question that's not on this bill.
Representative Cassell.
Mr. Speaker, have you had any conversations with OIR with regards to the approved form for the mandatory arbitration of citizens' matters?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the premise is that Citizens is doing arbitrations in DOA, this bill doesn't speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But this bill does address citizens' cases, a mandatory provision for citizens' cases to go to arbitration, does it not?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It does not.
Are there further questions of the sponsor? Representative Nixon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I posed it on social media and received a lot of questions from constituents and Floridians across the state. So a few, first of all, very basic. People want to know, after the passage of this bill, will property insurance rates go up?
Representative Leak, if you can answer that hypothetical.
Yeah, I'll do the best I can. Property insurance rates are required by law to be actuarially sound. So whatever the actuarial science dictates is what property insurance rates will do. Now, I will tell you, I believe property insurance rates are still going up. I believe that this bill mitigates that increase.
Representative Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does this bill offer transparency about why homeowners are being dropped or not renewed, or not getting insurance?
Representative Leak, if you'd like to answer that
I'm-
question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry, I'm going to need some clarification on the question.
Representative Nixon, you're recognized to clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are some Floridians that reached out to me. They've given reason, they stated that they have not been renewed, and insurance companies are giving them vague reasons like things like exposure management. And then telling them, good luck getting insurance with an 18-year-old roof. And I know that we recently passed legislation that prohibited us from denying folks based on roofs if they still had, like, the life of the roof was at least 5 years or more. And so I wanted to know, does this insurance bill allow more transparency about why homeowners are not getting insured?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you indicated, we did a great deal of work, I think, on making sure that homeowners were dropped unfairly. This bill doesn't disturb any of the work that we've previously done.
Further questions? Representative Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this question goes to citizens. Unfortunately, I had to get on citizens based on the amount of money that I would have had to come out the pocket for insurance. Can you kind of tell me why folks are going to have to get flood insurance now? What's the rationale behind that?
Representative Leak.
Mr. Speaker, if I may defer to my prime co-sponsor, Representative Rommel.
Representative Rommel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative, we all know that Hurricane Ian just hit about 75, 78 days ago in Southwest Florida. And unfortunately, a great deal of those folks that had citizen insurance did not have flood insurance. And we think to help people mitigate claims when there's a flood, if there was a requirement based on the policy, especially with the citizens, it'll help protect them in the future.
Representative Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So if I am on Citizens right now, I am nowhere near flood zone. There's no river, there's no lake. I'm not on a beach. I am going to be required to get flood insurance.
Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is a phase-in period, so it won't be immediately. It's based on the area. If you're in a flood area on renewal, you're gonna, but if you're not in a flood area, I think it's by 2027, you'll be required.
Representative Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do you all have an estimation on how much that would raise folks' rates if they are forced to get flood insurance and they're on Citizens?
Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not really a rate increase. You're buying an additional coverage.
Representative Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do you have any idea how much that additional coverage will be?
Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the time of the market, rates change based on the value of your home. For a $200,000 policy would be more than a $250,000 policy. So we don't have that information because it's not available today.
Further questions of the sponsor? Representative Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On lines 1367 to 1372, it says that citizens customers have to comparison shop for similar coverage every year. And if there is something available that is within 20% more expensive of what they're paying, then they will have to leave Citizens and take on a new Assure. Is that true?
Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes.
Further questions? Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Has there been a cost analysis done or any research done on how many people will be forced off of Citizens and forced to take a plan that is more than what they're actually paying right now?
Representative Rommel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And no, because that data changes every year upon renewal and based on what a private carrier would offer.
Further questions of the sponsor? Representative Escamani, questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, our chairs. Okay, so I'm not an attorney, but I do want to ask about the attorney fees. My understanding is that attorney fees are typically in place to help hold that insurance company accountable. If we get rid of them, what are the other accountability measures in your bill?
Representative Leak, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and hello, my friend. Good to see you again. We're not getting rid of attorney's fees. We're getting rid of one-way attorney's fees. So attorney's fees will still be available as they would in any other litigation. And rather than read through all of the, the prompt payer changes that we're making in the favor of the consumer again, I'll just tell you their staff analysis is great on that, and that's where I would refer you.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for that, Chair. Is there one favorite accountability measure from the staff analysis you can share with me so I know?
Representative Leak, you're recognized to cite your favorite accountability measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you know I love me some accountability measures. So that's hard to pick a favorite, but I think one of the most meaningful is the carrier is going to have to accept or deny a claim now within 60 days, which starts the process for the consumer to get made whole quicker.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chair, for your favorite. Does your favorite have an exception in the case of a declaration of natural disaster, or does it apply in all situations?
Representative Leak, you're recognized.
Thank you. Yes, if their OIR has the ability to come in and say, because of whatever, let's just take Hurricane Michael where communications were shut down for a period of time. Because of what's happening here, then we're going to extend that period of time, but it would have to be something along the lines of a natural disaster.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Chair, in the situation of Hurricane Michael, Ian, Nicole, insurance companies don't have to follow that new accountability metric, correct?
Representative Leak.
No, I would say that's incorrect. They have to follow a new accountability metric or a subsequent emergency order from OIR or the governor or something along those lines.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So does a declaration of disaster in XYZ County, does that allow the insurance companies to have more time? I guess is the heart of my question.
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Only if those circumstances are such that OIR feels that an emergency order is necessary. And the reason I brought up Hurricane Michael, because communications were down, which could impact the ability to deliver mail, could impact the ability to make phone calls, those types of things, but only in that limited circumstance.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thanks, Chair. Will your bill make it easier or harder for a consumer to access the courts?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. This bill has no impact on access to courts.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Would you say your bill is expanding the free market or restricting it?
I don't know if that goes to the bill. Representative Leak, would you like to answer that, or would you like to rephrase your question? Representative, as to the bill. Representative Escamani, a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. I thought Republicans loved the free market, but I will pivot. Just talking about a consumer's ability to also engage in the free market, meaning, free market can also be options, but it can also be the ability to hold a company accountable, a balance, if you will, in the market. Do you think that this shifts the balance towards one way over the other?
Representative Leak, you're recognized to comment on how this affects the market.
Thank you. I don't believe this. I believe this will impact capacity, making coverage more available for more people across the state. But I think your question was a little bit different. I think that this levels the playing field in such a way that furthers the purpose of increasing capacity and increasing the market, which should be good for every consumer.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know you've said the term mitigation. This will help mitigate the crisis we're in. Can you define mitigation for us? What does that actually mean in your perspective?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've said it will help mitigate the increases in premiums as we go forward, and I mean lessen.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for that question. Do you have any type of estimation on the percentage of mitigation to lessen the rates? Any percentage that we can go back home and tell our constituents about?
Representative Leak, if you can answer that hypothetical.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, I can't answer that. There are too many uncertainties, unknowns out there right now to put a number to it. But we know that we're moving the big pieces, the big blocks in place to enable that to happen.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it true that this bill will force citizen policyholders to accept more expensive coverage plans from the private market?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe that question's already been asked by a new representative. Representative Harris, thank you. But yes, what this will do is, remember, citizens, insurer of last resort. Right, so what this will do will require people who are in Citizens who are able to get a privately placed insurance policy within 20% of what they're paying in Citizens to move to that private placed policy.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thanks for that answer. And I'm sorry to repeat a question. What are some of the practical effects of making Citizens less competitive? Because that's my read on the bill, is that we're trying to make Citizens less competitive as the insurer of only resort these days, right? So what's the practical effects of that for the consumer? I'm not talking about the market, but for the consumer.
Representative Escamani will direct that question to Representative Rommel, co-sponsor. Representative Rommel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I guess that's kind of a question, but Citizens rates right now are not actuarially sound. Citizens was supposed to be the insurer of last resort. Citizens become the insurer of first resort. Every single citizen in Florida, whether they have an insurance policy, property insurance or not, when Citizens Board determines it needs more money, every single citizen in Florida will be charged that subsidy. Also, as the 8,000 policies per month goes on the books at Citizens, it puts the state in danger of this unknown risk for catastrophe. So I would say that it doesn't make it, less competitive.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, chairs, for that response. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of a Citizens policyholder. When this bill passes and goes into place, what will happen? What notice will they get? What will their experience be? Could you just describe me through the experience of a Citizens policyholder right now if this bill becomes law?
Direct that question to Representative Rommel. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just like any other consumer, they're going to get a renewal notice or not. With their agent, with Citizens, they're going to have to shop that policy and compare it to other private markets that are out there. And if there's a private market out there that's within 20% of the Citizens rate, that person will go to that private market.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. With that renewal notice, will it be a different number? Will the new costs be higher or lower for that Citizens policyholder?
Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can't predict what the financial markets will be tomorrow, never mind upon the renewal of somebody's policy.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. So we talked about the chair's favorite part on accountability. I did want to ask you about the time policyholders have to file a claim. What is justification for that change?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if you'll indulge me, Representative Escamani, I want to follow up on one of the Citizens aspects. It wasn't that long ago that we had a robust property insurance market. I remember 3 years ago, Citizens only had 500,000 policies. And during that period of time and leading up to that, you would start, homeowners would start to see decreases in insurance. So what we've seen happen has happened dramatically and quickly. So what we need to do is get back to where we have that robust private market again, and that'll help everybody in Citizens as well as every homeowner. And you asked me a different question. And that question was, about the time limit for initiating a claim. The goal of all consumers, and really what we need to force upon insurance carriers, is to resolve the claims more quickly. So the quicker you get the claim started, the quicker you can reach resolution.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks for the clarity on both fronts. Is there a requirement that insurance companies notify consumers of the timeline change?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Representative Escamani. That's not addressed in this bill. I do believe it is addressed in the regulations, but it's not addressed in this bill.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And forgive me, I'm actually a renter, so my landlord has the home insurance. But if a storm does go through, does that homeowner get a letter in the mail from the insurance company that says, hey, we saw a storm go through area, here's your timeline to apply for coverage? Does that happen already? And if not, is that in the bill?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is not, the law as it stands today is not changed in this bill as it relates to that. I can tell you that carriers are required to provide notice to the policyholders of any material changes to the policy.
Representative Escamani.
Okay, so thanks to that, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the chair. Based on my interpretation of our Q&A right now, in the case of a storm, we are potentially giving the insurance company more time to get back to a claim, but then we're cutting the time for a consumer to file a claim. What is justification for those two changes?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. Yeah, the justification is to move claims more quickly through the process and get the consumer to the end result more quickly.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So if the consumer misses the time change and loses everything, so is trying to take care of other issues before filing the claim and they miss that deadline, even in the case of declared disaster, do they have no extra wiggle room compared to the insurance company?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. And so we're kind of fast forwarding into the legal aspects of it now when you start to get to court, and there's something called a material breach. And so if you file a notice on day 8 instead of day 7, is that a material breach or not? The claimant or the policyholder is going to get the opportunity to make those arguments, probably disposed of with the carrier, because you're never going to go fight a case over a day, right? But in any course or in any event, the policyholder would have recourse within the courts.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is my last question. Chair, just shifting gears a little bit to some of the element that I think is positive with OIR. OIR can have more power to audit and potentially sanction insurers. Can you describe what does sanction mean for OIR? What actually happens in that situation? And has it happened before? Maybe just kind of walk me through that process.
Representative Leak.
Thank you, and that's an excellent question. They can range from fines to pulling the certificate of authority for that carrier to ever write insurance again. They can also be criminal actions. There can also be civil actions, and I'll refer you back to a case with a carrier in Florida who was diverting money from a company that ended up going insolvent into a holding company and ultimately into the pockets of the owners of the holding company. The state of Florida went after that person, and that person had not only had to pay the money back, but I think they were criminally indicted.
Further questions? Representative Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How does Citizens Insurance verify that current policyholders are entering to the marketplace through competitive pricing? And if so, also what's the penalty if they don't do so?
Representative Rommel, I believe, will take that question. Representative Rommel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can you clarify exactly what you're looking for?
Representative Franklin, if you can give some clarification to your question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So as people that are on the Citizen Insurance policy, and they're having to go out every single year to verify into the marketplace that the pricing is at least within 20% to make that jump, Is there a way that Citizens Insurance can verify that? And then if so, is there a penalty for not going out to the marketplace to look for insurance to bring back in and potentially move?
Representative Leake.
I'm going to do my best with that one. Citizens policies are also placed through your insurance agent, and your insurance agent goes out to the market to find what's available to you. And in that process of identifying different carriers and different policies, you can determine whether somebody is within 20% of Citizens or not. Forgive me here, but I believe that that process then goes to, if you're going to get a Citizens policy, there's some verification that you have, in fact, as the agent, have shopped that policy and that these are the other options.
Representative Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do you also believe that this bill will help attract more insurance companies to Florida to do business? And if so, is there a target amount of insurance companies we need in Florida to do business to reach economic equilibrium where we can have a competitive homeowners insurance that's a stable market?
Representative Lee.
Thank you. I do believe that this bill does that, and I believe it wholeheartedly. In my opinion, the more competitors you have in the market, the better it is for the consumer. So there's not a limit, but we'll know it when we get there. We were there in 2015 and the years leading up to it. So we'll see it. And the question is, how many new carriers to the marketplace do you need before the consumers start to see a decrease in their premiums or a mitigation in the increase of their premiums? I think that can happen in short order, but you can't say for certainty when it's going to happen. You can't say for certainty how many carriers it's going to take for that to happen.
Further questions? Representative Henson.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations on your ascent to Speaker. My first question, and part of the answer has already been given, but I need it clarified for me. I'm not an insurance expert. I'm not an attorney. And part of the answer you gave to Rep. Escamani. My question was, will this bill fully eliminate all attorney fees if a homeowner is compelled to sue, leaving all attorney fees to the homeowner? It sounds like it won't. However, I'm not sure what one-way attorney fees really means. Could you explain that to me so my constituents understand it and me?
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative. The answer is no, right? It doesn't eliminate attorney's fees from either side. And what one-way attorney's fees means is that one party can get them upon prevailing, but the other party cannot. It eliminates that, creates an equal playing field.
Thank you, Representative Henson. Additional question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My second question, I wonder what financial impacts will this bill have other than the $1 billion FORA, I think it is, bailout is what I'm calling it.
Representative Lee.
Thank you. And I'll kick the FORA stuff to Representative Rommel here in a second. But remember, the FORA program is not free. They have to pay market rates for that coverage. And is in fact those premiums that allow us to get more than $1 billion impact out of that program. So the $1 billion only backs up the program. The premiums they still have to purchase it, right? And are there financial impacts? You know, that's really too broad of a question for me to answer. The answer is yes. What are those financial impacts? You know, I think when we get the market back in shape to where it needs to be, the financial impact will be felt in a positive way on every consumer.
Representative Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair, the staff analysis mentions not only FORA, it mentions salary funds for OIR. Are we planning to give a salary increase to anyone in OIR?
Representative Lee.
Thank you, and I love that question. The answer is we are appropriating more money to OIR to further investigate and hold carriers accountable for activities that would be in violation of the current law or the incoming law.
Representative Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Great. So these salaries are going to perhaps new staff to do that?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. It's to fill existing open positions that will, I don't know how many of you know this, but our OIR is understaffed in comparison to other similar agencies across the country. This allows them to get back to a place where they can, fill the open positions they have and do some of the work that we need them to do with regard to keeping carriers in check.
Further questions of the sponsor? Representative Skidmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Rep. Lake and Rep. Rommel. And I may have to get with you later to get this question answered because it came up while you were describing the contents of the bill. And at some point, something that the insurance companies do voids the policy. And I wanted to know specifically what those were because I immediately had a concern that it would be a tool for voiding policies.
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I know what you're talking about. And what I was saying is insurance companies are allowed to take electronic evidence now of a claim. If a policyholder were to doctor up those pictures, the digital pictures, that could void the policy.
Representative Skidmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And who determines if those photos were doctored? Is there an investigation? It's not the insurance company that says, hey, this insured doctored these photos, therefore I'm voiding the policy, right?
Representative Leak.
It would start with that. So the insurance company would look, if they found evidence of fraud, they could make the claim or they could make the assertion that the policy is voided. Ultimately, a court and a jury is going to have to determine whether that policy was voided or not.
Further questions of the sponsor? Representative Gottlieb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chair Leak, my question is, as an attorney, we want certainty and this is an adhesion contract between the insurance company and the insurer. As it relates to the arbitration clause, is there anything in this bill that guarantees that Florida law will be the law that's used in arbitration?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This law doesn't, let me step back and say, you said contract of adhesion. All of us lawyers taken back to contracts class in law school, terrible stuff. Contracts of adhesion are unlawful, but I get what you're saying, right? So technically, I don't think this is a contract of adhesion under the law. This bill doesn't change anything that's in current law regarding choice of law or forum selection.
Representative Gottlieb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not practicing in the space, does that mean that Florida law and Florida jurisdiction will be binding on the insurance companies for determination of where and what law is appropriate for these contracts?
Representative Leak.
There's nothing in this bill that would demand Florida law, which is, I think, the question that you're asking. There are the provisions in any civil case about personal jurisdiction, et cetera. You may end up with a choice of law that's different, and a lot of companies use Delaware law. I've seen some who use New York law, but not many. So choice of law is not impacted by this. Whether you're going to have to go to Texas for an arbitration or something like that, this bill doesn't address it, but I would expect that once that got to court, you would still have personal jurisdiction issues that would have to be worked out.
Representative Gottlieb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Chair Leak, with that in mind, so if a homeowner did have to go to Texas to arbitrate this, who's going to bear the costs of that travel for the arbitration process?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. And I'm giving a bit more information here on the side. OIR already has to approve those provisions, the arbitration provisions, and has the ability to say yes or no on those arbitration provisions. My understanding is they don't permit those type of provisions that forces a homeowner to go to some other state for an arbitration.
Representative Gottlieb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Final question. But then am I to understand that they do allow certain Florida contracts with homeowners and insurance companies to be governed by law that's outside the state of Florida, as you suggested, New York or Delaware?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. The answer is the same. OIR still has to approve that and typically has not approved that.
Before we move on, let's take a pause for a couple recognitions. Representative Persons Malika, are you ready to make a recognition? You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, we've had numerous Lee County elected officials up here in our beautiful capital, and I'm sure you'll see them coming up quite often during our committee weeks in session, as we'll be considering many issues that are critical and important to our home community. We had our Lee County Commission Chair, Brian Hammond, up here, as well as Commissioner Kevin Ruane, who's chairman of our Long-Term Recovery Task Force. But I also have two of our constitutional officers here up in the gallery. And we had a third constitutional officer who many of you all know very well, property appraiser Matt Caldwell was up here. But I wanted to recognize the two constitutional officers who are here in the East Gallery, our Lee County Tax Collector, Noel Branning, and our Lee County Clerk of Courts, Kevin Carnes. Thank you and welcome to the Florida House.
We also have another recognition, Representative Soroy.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, members. It's my honor to welcome my friend, Brevard County Clerk of Court, Rachel Sadoff, to the Florida House.
Are there further questions of the sponsor? Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Leek, just a follow-up question from an answer that you gave to Representative Henson and the budget for OIR. So do you know if in OIR's budget, the unfilled positions were already included in their budget?
Representative Lee.
I think the technical answer to your question is yes, because those positions are in the budget. But what we're doing is appropriating money so they can actually fill those positions.
Representative Valdez with a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So if it's in their budget to hire those individuals, why the extra money to hire the individuals if it's already in their budget?
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because the salaries that were being offered to fill those positions were so low that they could not fill the positions. And by the way, these are the positions that are necessary for OIR to hold or further hold carriers accountable.
Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do we know what those salaries are going to be for those unfilled positions? And will the rest of the team also receive an increase in pay?
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, we don't know.
Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do you think that the department could give us that information once it is settled?
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a member of the Florida House, if you request that information, I'm sure you will get it.
Further questions of the sponsor? Representative Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I am still a little foggy as it relates to this 60-day rule provision for folks filing claims. Can you go into a little more detail about that for me?
Representative Lee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The 60-day provision is a change from 90 days to 60 days for you to hear back, for the consumer to hear back from their carrier on whether they are accepting or denying in whole and part the claim.
Representative Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can you tell me if there's a penalty for the insurance companies if the consumers or the customers don't hear back within 60 days?
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As it relates specifically to the 60 days, if the carrier fails to meet that deadline, it is evidence of bad faith. It is not bad faith per se, but it is evidence of bad faith. Additionally, on top of all of that, carriers who fail to follow the rules are subject to fines and other penalties by OIR.
Representative Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, so I am a homeowner. I filed a claim. I don't hear back in 60 days. What am I supposed to do? Who do I tell?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's a little tangential to the bill, but I'll tell you, you'll file a complaint with OIR.
Any further questions? Representative Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it would be helpful for you to kind of go into a little more detail around that because again, like customers just don't understand. I really don't understand as well. And so you're saying that I file, you said, what do? I report that to OIR? You said I report that to OIR?
Representative Leak, do you want to expand at all as to what happens after a complaint to OIR and walk everyone through that process?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's outside of the bill, but I'll give you roughly, you go to DFS, it has a website, there's a complaint form, you file the complaint, and it initiates a process within OIR.
Representative Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is this information like located in your policy and all this stuff? You know who to call and who to talk to?
Representative Nixon, that is really outside the bill. So the bill makes insurers respond more quickly from 90 days to 60 days, but everything else is not changed by the bill, the rest of the process. Do you have additional questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. What options do folks have if the claim is, I guess you might say that's outside the scope. Let me figure out how to reword that. But moving on to another question, if someone is on Citizens now and based on your bill, they're forced to get flood insurance, and then they can't afford that. What happens to the customer then?
Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill doesn't address people's personal financial situations if they can't afford flood insurance, regular insurance, electric bill. It doesn't address what people can and cannot afford.
Representative Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is there a possibility that if this bill passes, customers that are currently on Citizens will no longer be able to afford the cost of their homes due to the fact that they now have to get flood insurance?
And Representative, I think that again is outside the scope of the bill and really calls for speculation. I know there's been several questions in this area, but if you have a question as to what the bill does, either of the co-sponsors can answer it. Representative Hart, any questions?
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I only had one question. I'm more concerned about whether or not our consumers will get an education on these changes. Can we require Citizens to put a flyer or an information sheet into our consumers' bills in order for them to better understand what changes we're making here today?
Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And that is not part of the bill, but future conversations, whether it's Citizens or other carriers, I'm sure they want to keep their customers informed.
Are there further questions of the sponsor? Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hey, Chair. So in response to the question about OIR, to Representative Gottlieb's point about arbitrations in other jurisdictions, is it the representation from staff or whomever that there are no instances in which OIR has ever or will ever approve an arbitration in another state or in another country?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. I'll do the best that I can with that. My understanding is there are no instances in which OIR has approved a provision requiring consumers to go out of the state to arbitrate. Now, that is within the discretion of OIR to approve certain forms. So I can't say what's going to happen down the road. I would not anticipate, I don't think you should reasonably anticipate that position would change.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reason I ask is I had a conversation with Senator Farmer, and he was telling me horror stories of where people had to arbitrate because of the mandatory arbitration provision in New York, in Texas, and in one instance in London, England. So I guess I'm just trying to get clarification of what the basis of this policy is. Is it an OIR policy? Is it an internal regulation? Or is it a statute upon which the agency decides when and how to approve such requests?
Representative, that's really outside the bill. This bill does not change that in any way, shape, or form, and I think it's been asked and answered. Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My next question has to do with the comments about voiding policies as a result of insureds doctoring up, whether it's photographs or other evidence. My question is, what if any recourse is there for the insured if the insurance company doctors up either photographs, reports, or other evidence in conjunction with processing the claim?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill doesn't change existing law as that is today, but the process is as we have discussed. You go, you make the complaint, OIR can find that carrier, they can, if they're doctoring things, hopefully they're pulling certificates of authority. But the process for going against a carrier through OIR is not changed.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So that would be an example of maybe a carrier operating in bad faith when they're doing certain funny business, if you will, with the appraisals. In response to a question earlier with respect to bad faith on, I think, Representative Escamani's question about accountability. So we went over the timelines that the bill includes, and I appreciate the timelines, but right now, in current law, we have timelines, and the insurance companies are not always operating within those timelines. The answer you gave as their recourse, their accountability measure for when those timelines are not met in the current bill, which also applies to the current law, is that is evidence of bad faith. But it's my understanding that this bill now eliminates bad faith unless there's a trial that occurs. Is my understanding correct?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll do the best I can because there's a whole lot of premise in there for me to kind of weed through. This bill does not eliminate bad faith. Does not eliminate.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How does this bill impact bad faith?
Representative Leak.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. Can you repeat that?
Thank you,
Representative
Mr.
Joseph.
Speaker. How does this bill impact bad faith?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It requires a finding of breach of contract before you can go forward on a bad faith claim.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you. So in the example that we were talking about, when the insurance company fails to meet the deadline, that is not necessarily an example of a breach of contract. In such an instance, that insured, would they be able to maintain a bad faith action when the company is acting in bad faith but has not breached the contract?
Representative, I think you're making a statement. Are you asking if the failure to follow the prompt pay rule is a breach of contract that could yield a bad faith lawsuit?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The answer is yes, it could, upon a finding by a court that the carrier had breached the contract.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Upon a finding by a court in the course of a trial seeking a bad faith claim?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. The breach finding would come first, and then a bad faith claim could go forward.
Representative Joseph.
So in the instance, thank you, Mr. Speaker, in the example of a company doing other things other than missing these deadlines, such as playing with appraisals to the detriment of the consumer, which would also be indicative of bad faith, would that constitute a breach of a contract?
Representative League.
Thank you. What constitutes a breach of a contract is ultimately going to be up to the court. But you brought up appraisals. Recall that we have put language in the bill to have more sanctions and declare sanctionable conduct by the improper use of appraisals for OIR to go after carriers. But your question is whether the abuse of the appraisal process could be a breach of the contract. I would say yes, it could be a breach of a contract, but ultimately that's going to be up for a court to decide.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the responses. My question is following up on the inquiries about one-way attorney's fees. The general rule is that each party pays their attorney's fees. For example, auto insurance companies here, we don't have that rule, but we have it for property insurance in Florida right now before your bill takes them away. Can you elaborate for the body what was the rationale in making one-way attorney's fees for property insurance in the first place?
Your question is what the history of one-way attorney's fees is, or what happens in the bill? Representative Joseph.
It's the legislative history and why there was a change in legislative intent that is now changing that in the bill. So the first question that's pending right now is about have you looked at the legislative intent or history as to why we even have one-way attorney's fees as it relates to property insurance?
That's outside the bill, but Representative Leak, if you care to respond, otherwise it's outside the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Briefly, by eliminating one-way attorney's fees, we join the other 39 states in the country who don't have one-way attorney's fees for these claims.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Those other states have a lot of other provisions that keep their insurance costs low, but focusing on the one that we have here with eliminating our one-way attorney's fees. Right now, for example, our auto insurance is not one-way. It is one-way. Sorry. Our auto insurance in Florida does not allow for one-way attorney's fees, but our property insurance does, because the nature of the claims are different. When we take away money that goes to the attorney, that's taking away from the claim. There's a difference. My question for you is, did you contemplate that in eliminating the one-way attorney's fees, that basically you would be taking money out of the pocket of the property owner and not necessarily of any attorney?
Representative Leak, it may have been asked and answered. I don't know if you care to expound at all.
Yes, briefly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're going to take property insurance and treat it just like personal injury, right? Personal injury doesn't have one-way fees, yet the cost of a broken leg is the cost of a broken leg. But if it's okay in the personal injury arena, why wouldn't it be okay here? And so that's what I'm suggesting is we, like 39 other states, are not going to allow one-way attorney's fees. Now, you made a comment that those other states have other laws. Obviously, every state has its own set of laws, and you can make that argument about any other state. What those other states also have is a third of the cost of property insurance.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In comparing personal injury claims to property insurance claims, aren't there additional damages that are available to personal injury claimants that are not available in the property insurance realm? Whether we're talking about damages for pain and suffering, and a lot of other consequential damages, punitive damages that increase the value of the claim beyond the actual monetary damage. So your broken leg might cost surgery. You may not need to do the surgery. However, the cost of replacing your house is the cost of replacing your house. If the cost of your house is $250,000 and you only get $50,000, that does not make you whole. Whereas the person in a personal injury claim may have other damages available to them.
Representative, you're getting to a
that are not
question.
there.
I think we're kind of leading into debate here. Representative Joseph.
Thank you,
A
Mr.
question on the
Speaker.
bill.
Yes. So in correlating those two types of claims, do you not see a difference between a personal injury claim and a property claim in terms of how the damages will be drawn down by the consumer?
Representative, I think that is clearly, I'm trying to give you some latitude, but that's really outside the bill. If you have a question as to what this bill does, or we can come back to you later if you have any further questions. Representative Joseph.
Thank you for your latitude, Mr. Speaker. I was just trying to ask a question based on the assertion made by the bill sponsor. Thank you.
Further questions of the sponsor? Representative Benjamin, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chairman. I want to go over in this bill what the benefits are to our insurance market and to our consumers. In this bill, we're reducing the time for the policyholder to report their claim. Would you agree that that's a benefit to the insurer?
Representative, are you talking about the statute of limitations or the prompt payment changes?
I'm talking about the actual provision where we're going from 1 year or 2 years to 1 year.
Representative Leak.
I think it's a benefit to everybody, right? Because the sooner a claim is made, the more certainty there is about that claim, the sooner it can be processed.
Further questions? Representative Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In eliminating one-way attorney's fees, would you say that's a benefit to the policyholder or the insurer?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Eliminating one-way attorney's fees is a benefit to every consumer and every taxpayer.
Further questions? Representative Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In what way would you say that eliminating one-way attorney's fees is beneficial for the policyholder?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. In the review of the states that also do not have one-way attorney's fees, you will find that their premiums for property insurance are a third of what they are in the state of Florida. You will find that their claims are not tied up in litigation like they are in the state of Florida. That's a benefit to every policyholder and every taxpayer.
Representative Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the current arrangement of one-way attorney's fees, if a policyholder prevails, they would get their damages, and then the attorney's fees separately would get their attorney's fees. Is that how it currently works?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes.
Representative Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By eliminating one-way attorney's fees, we now rely on policyholders that either pay upfront or through a contingency arrangement. Is either one of those better than the current system for the policyholder?
I think that question's now been asked and answered. Further questions? Representative Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a contingency fee arrangement, which is what will likely happen in this particular case, because we could almost all agree that policyholders won't be able to pay my hourly rate up front. So in a contingency fee agreement, do the attorneys get paid separately, or do they take part of the award given to the policyholder?
Representative, I think that is outside the bill. This bill doesn't change contingency fee arrangements at all. Do you have a separate question, or can you rephrase your question as it pertains to the bill?
Mr. Speaker,
Representative
and I'll
Benjamin.
do respect, the bill changes the arrangement of attorney's fees. So I would think that any discussion with regards to the difference of attorney's fees would be in order.
I believe your question is as to contingency fees, if I understood it correctly. Do you have a separate question on the changes in attorney's fees in this bill?
Yes.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So are attorney's fees then now limited for the policyholder to hourly fees and contingency fees, rather than one-way attorney's fees.
Representative Leake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to defer this question to Chairman Rommel, because recall that we already eliminated and substantially limited attorney's fees in years past. So, but I'm going to defer this question to Chairman Rommel.
Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Benjamin, if you remember when we passed SB 76, it, in essence, again, I'm not an attorney, it eliminated one-way attorney fees. It required to collect attorney fees, there had to be a differential between the offer and the settlement of 25%. And what that did, that encouraged good faith negotiations between both parties. So this bill on the one-way attorney fee doesn't really change what we did in 76. It just codifies, it's just called one-way attorney fees. The bad faith is the, again, not being an attorney, the bad faith is the bigger issue there where we're, requiring proof of bad faith from a court.
Representative Benjamin.
Mr. Speaker, I'm at a quandary because what we've heard in this response is a misstatement of what attorney's fees under our current system, under that bill, actually does. It doesn't eliminate, in terms of eliminating one-way fees, it doesn't. It just changes the structure on which attorneys still get paid from the insurance as a prevailing party. So that's not a change, that's not an elimination of one-way attorney's fees. This bill eliminates one-way attorney's fees. So my question then is, if under our current bill, we make attorneys earn their fees by ensuring that they get a benefit to the policyholder, why would we eliminate attorney's fees altogether?
Representative, that may be good for debate. I don't know that the bill does not eliminate all attorneys' fees in various contexts. So let me give you an opportunity to rephrase the question to Representative Brommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In essence, again, under our current law, attorneys still get attorney's fees because if they get 120% more than what was offered, the insurer pays the attorney. That's one-way attorney's fees. But under your bill, you said no more of that either. No more of that either. So one-way attorney's fees has now been eliminated. Why the change from what we have now to no one-way attorney's fees at all?
Let me recognize one of Representative Leake to discuss proposal for settlement under the bill.
Thank you. So it doesn't eliminate attorney's fees. Attorneys can still get paid. What it does is it eliminate that instance in which there's only one-way attorney's fees, which brings Florida in line with 39 other states. Those 39 other states have the benefit of a third of the cost of property insurance, have the benefit of not having claims tied up in litigation forever. Now, I think if we're being honest with each other, we have to acknowledge that one-way attorney's fees used by bad actors encourages the continuation of disputes. Because without the dispute, the fee doesn't grow. Right? So what this does is this takes us in line with those 39 other states, and we should enjoy the benefits that those same other 39 states enjoy.
Representative Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under our current rules, we have the ability to do PFS. Why was additional attention needed under this bill for PFS?
Representative Leake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That provision comes from our friends on the plaintiff's side of the bar. They wanted to revert to the old rule, and it made sense because it is a solid consumer protection.
Representative Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can you clarify for me what the consumer protection is with the PFS?
Representative Leake to briefly describe for the audience what a PFS does.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. A proposal for settlement or an offer of demand allows attorney's fees to be awarded in those instances in which the parties are unreasonably rejecting a settlement demand.
Representative Benjamin.
Aren't they currently doing that now? So, and if they are, then why would this be necessary?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Currently being used effectively now.
Are there further questions? Representative Benjamin.
I've only been here for a year.
It's okay, I've done it before.
2 years. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With regards to the evidence of bad faith, it requires a breach of contract first, which means that the insurance policy, the insurer had to not do something in accordance to the insurance policy, like not pay too little. So that requires a whole nother action before we can get to the bad faith. Would that be a correct recitation of that feature?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm not going to pretend to know the universe of ways that this could come up. But remember, you can get a determination of breach on a motion for summary judgment or partial summary judgment, which can occur prior to the end of the case.
Are there further questions of the sponsor? Representative Benjamin.
As it relates to OIR and the out-of-state provisions, I know that you said that we haven't had it before. We don't foresee it doing again. Is there any reason why we wouldn't just make sure by saying that they can't do it?
Representative, that is truly outside the scope of this bill. It's not to say we can't take that up in regular session. I assure you we'll continue to look at insurance in the coming sessions, but that's outside the scope of the bill. Do you have an additional question as to what the bill does?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm done.
Very well. Are there further questions of the sponsor? Representative Cassell, and questions?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Turning to my colleague, Rep. Escamani's points with regards to accountability measures, this bill provides a requirement that insurance companies respond to consumers from 14 days down to 7 days. Do we require the insurance companies to put that acknowledgement or that communication in writing to the consumer within 7 days?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. And just for the edification of all members here, if you want to give the chairman of appropriations a chance to sit down for a second, you can ask questions about citizens, and my friend Chairman Rommel will stand up. If you don't, though, just keep going. As to this instance, this bill does not change the requirements of insurance carriers now to notify their policyholders of changes in the policy, which exists now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But this bill does add that accountability measure that bringing the time frame down to 14 to 7 days, they notify their consumer of the communication, right?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes.
Representative Cassell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill actually also allows the carrier, when they respond in 7 days, to not respond in writing, but actually allows them to put that communication or acknowledgement of that communication in their claim file notes. Do you recall that provision of this bill?
Representative Leak, as to that section of the bill, and maybe we can come back if you come back to it, or if you're ready to answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't think that that's in the bill or what the bill does, but if you want to show that to me, let me see that. We'll check it out now too.
Further questions? Representative Cassell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Moving on to the citizens portion of this policy, does this policy change the burden of proof for citizens policyholders as it pertains to water damage claims?
Thank you for that question, Representative Leak. You can sit down now if you'd like. Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Speaker, and thanks for giving our appropriation chairman a little bit of a break. The citizens portion only changes the takeout portion and the requirement for flood.
Representative Cassell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does it create a burden of proof on the consumer to prove water damage?
Representative Cassell, just give us a moment. Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're keeping our staff busy too. The burden of proof has not changed from current policy.
Are there further questions of the sponsor? Representative Cassell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With regards to the change from 90 days to 60 days, in the event an insurance company does not respond by day 60 with a coverage determination, is a new cause of action created in this bill allowing a consumer to bring forth a lawsuit to hold them accountable for their failure to respond within this new 60-day timeframe?
Representative Leake.
Thank you. Back up. This bill does not create new causes of action. A new cause or a cause of action would already exist for that.
Representative Cassell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So am I to understand, based on your answer, Chair Leak, that you believe currently in Florida law, there is a separate cause of action for a consumer to bring if a insurance company fails to respond currently with on the 90-day time frame, that there is a distinct cause of action that can be brought to hold an insurance company accountable for failing to respond to that time frame?
Representative, I think that's just been asked and answered. Do you have any additional questions to the bill?
You believe
Representative Cassell, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is there currently in Florida law a cause of action for an insurance company who fails to respond on the 90-day time frame?
Representative Leake.
Thank you. I think that was the question that you're asking. And what you're proposing is there should be a distinct cause of action when a breach of contract cause of action already exists. So what I'm telling you is there is a breach of contract cause of action for every policy holder to bring against any carrier as they deem appropriate.
Representative Cassell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the event the insurance company fails to respond on day 60, is a consumer on day 61 able to bring a cause of action for breach of contract as a result of this new bill?
Representative Cassell, I think that's been asked and answered now. There's a legal remedy on day 61. Representative Cassell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Turning to the FORA portion of this policy, and thank you for indulging me in my question yesterday with regards to the Commerce Committee. With regards to FORA, do our current rating agencies such as Demotech, AM Best, and Kroll currently require insurance companies to meet that reinsurance capacity to have a reinstatement layer?
Giving Chair Leake a moment for a drink of water. Would that be Representative Rommel? Representative Rommel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not positive what the requirement is from a private company to another private company.
Representative Cassell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Are you aware if the rating agencies that determine the solvency of our insurance companies are required to carry reinsurance that covers storms other than named event?
Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just give us 1 second.
Members, while they're conferring, I'll note on the clock that we're under 30 minutes remaining in questions. If the clerk would pause the clock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, we don't know that requirement. We just know that they need to carry enough reinsurance to address any one in a 100-year storm.
Further questions? Representative Cassell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So for purposes of clarification, you don't know if the rating agencies that determine the solvency of our current market require our carriers to have either both a reinstatement layer and coverage for storms other than named events. such as severe convective storms that we experience here in Florida?
Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, we don't know, similar to the CAT fund or the RAP fund that didn't require that.
Further questions? Representative Cassell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How many of the 39 states that you continue to refer to are a peninsula state?
I don't know that we have that information for you, but we can certainly get it for you. You're asking how many of the 39 states are a peninsula? Representative Cassell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm asking Chair Leak, who continuously refers to the 39 other states that don't have the one-way attorney's fees provisions, how many, and we're utilizing this to lower costs here in Florida, how many of those 39 states are peninsulas?
And Representative, I'll remind you, if you should only ask a question that you don't know the answer to yourself, that goes to the bill. And so if you don't mind asking a question that goes to the bill. Are there any further questions of the sponsor? Further questions? Representative Escamani, and questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was inspired for just maybe one or two more quick questions on the attorney fees piece. Do we know, so there's been a lot of conversation on the plaintiff's attorney fees, but not so much on the defense. And I'm curious, do we have any data around, how much both are charging? What's the average hourly rate, and who actually charges more on one case? Is there any data on that?
Representative Leak.
Is there any data on that? There are studies that talk about how much of the property insurance litigation dollar makes it to the attorneys and how much of it makes it to the consumer. The studies indicate that of every dollar spent on property insurance litigation, 8 pennies of it make it to the consumer. The rest of it goes to the roofers, the adjusters, and the attorneys. And the study I've seen shows 73 cents of those dollars get split between or go to the plaintiffs and defense attorneys. And what split, I don't know.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Do we have any data on just how many hours are spent between, hours clocked in by the defense attorneys versus the plaintiff attorneys? Who's clocking more hours in?
And Representative, this is way outside the scope of the bill. I understand the question, Representative Leak. If you want to try to field it, or we'll move on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And because we're such good friends, I will tell you that Citizens collects some of this data. I believe OIR is collecting some of this data. Whether it breaks it down by hours spent, I don't know, but it would be a place to go to find that information.
Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. I appreciate that. I candidly don't know, so that's why I was wondering. But my last question, for one-way attorney fees, you are only paid that if you win your case. Is that correct?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes. For all prevailing party attorneys fees, whether they're one-way or two-way, you only get paid if you win.
Further questions of the sponsor? Representative Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is there anything in this bill that guarantees that there will be a rate reduction for the consumer?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill does not fix prices.
Further questions? Representative Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What recourse can I provide or answers can I provide my constituents that are retirees or disabled veterans on fixed incomes if they see a stark policy fee rate from their policyholders? What kind of, what can I point to in this bill that will give them some type of recourse?
Representative Leak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll do the best I can with that. What this bill signifies to me is hope. Hope and a plan to make sure that we as the state of Florida are doing everything we possibly can to repair a broken property insurance market. And when we create stability, we can increase capacity. When we increase capacity, we can go back to the days when you regularly open up your homeowner's policy notice and you would see that there had been a rate reduction. That's the answer I would give them.
Representative Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier, you stated that the PFS statute or rule, it wasn't being used effectively. What data or basis did you rely on in changing the PFS rules that are present in this bill?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. The reports that we were getting back, and largely from the consumer side, the plaintiff side, was that they were not being used at all. And so this allows them to go back into place and be used.
Representative Gann.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is there anything in this bill that would prevent the ineffective use of a PFS to address the data that you relied on?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. Let me do the best I can with that. Data that you're talking about, the lack of use of something is not measured, right? It is not kept. It's just not being used. So in those instances, you have to rely on the folks who have the information. In this case, we were relying on the lawyers for the consumers, the plaintiff's lawyers, who are saying that they were not being used. You also said about something about the ineffective use of PFSs. This bill makes the use of PFSs effective.
Further questions? Representative Gann.
So the PFS, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the PFS can be used by insurance companies in litigation. And so my question is, why weren't insurance company attorneys using the PFS as a mechanism to ensure, I guess, fair or even litigation in property insurance claims?
Representative Leak.
Thank you. And I want to make clear PFSs are available to both sides. But the prior state of the law was we had eliminated attorney's fees for the use of PFS, so it made them ineffective.
Are there further questions of the sponsor? Further questions? Representative Gann.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How many of the 39 other states that we are aligning with are in hurricane zones?
Can you repeat that question?
Yes. How many of the other of the 39 other states, excuse me, that we are aligning with are in hurricane zones?
And Representative, again, that's well, I'm trying to give a great latitude as to the bill, but that is well outside the bill. Do you have a question as to what the bill does?
No, Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Representative Joseph, in questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to give our esteemed Chair of Appropriations a rest while I direct questions to Chair Rommel.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
You're recognized for your question.
My question, as it pertains to citizens, what would you say are the top 2 takeaways that consumers need to know, if anything, about the changes to Citizens? Because unfortunately, a lot of our Floridians are on Citizens, which is part of why you're trying to depopulate it. Let's know what they need.
Representative Rommel, I think that's a question on your top 2 favorite things about citizens in the bill. Representative Joseph, to rephrase that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So not necessarily your favorite, but practical. If you were talking to your grandma or any constituent and say, here's the changes that are happening, here's what you need to do to prepare or adjust or whatever, what practical information do Floridians need to know about the changes to Citizens?
Representative Rommel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for, I guess, an opinion question. And again, going back to the 2 named storms that we just saw, Nicole and Ian, so many of Floridians that have Citizens insurance didn't know that they didn't have flood insurance. And sometimes, folks make decisions just based on their budget. Now they're seeing this catastrophic event that they don't actually have coverage because they didn't have flood coverage. And we know, especially Ian, major effects with flooding. now between their agent and their policyholder with Citizens, they're going to know they're going to be required to have flood insurance.
Further questions of the sponsor? Further questions? Seeing none. Are there amendments?
On the desk, Mr. Speaker.
Read the First Amendment.
Representative Cassell offered the following amendment, barcode 798733, remove lines 163 through 393 and insert an amendment.
Representative Cassell, you recognized to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My amendment deals with the FORA line of questioning that I asked sponsor and Chair Leek and Rommel. Rating agencies in the state of Florida, when we talk about reinsurance, require them to have not only a reinstatement layer, but they are also required to cover non-named events. We know here in Florida that we experience more storms than just hurricanes. If our reinsurance market isn't filled with those two layers, what happens is our companies can't fulfill their capacity and they go insolvent. While FORA provides a great first step, this amendment aligns with the private reinsurance market requirements of our insurance companies. If they don't carry both a reinstatement layer and coverage for these non-named events, they will have to go get it to the private marketplace where it's more expensive, and they will not meet the requirements set forth by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which means all homeowners who have mortgages that are federally backed will not be able to keep that coverage. So we are here for good policy. This policy expands the maximum aggregate coverage, this amendment, for all selected FORA layers from $1 billion to $2 billion to support the funding needed for this additional reinstatement limit. And it aligns FORA with the private reinsurance market to provide all-weather coverage as required by financial stability rating agencies. That's the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Are there questions of the sponsor on the amendment? Questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, is there debate? Seeing none, you're recognized to close on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we heard from Chair Leek, the reinsurance costs are a huge component of why our market is failing in the state of Florida. We have a lack of capacity to fulfill it, meaning we have a lack of availability for our insurance companies to purchase it, and it's expensive. The goal of FORA is to reduce the cost to our carriers so they can fulfill this capacity and stabilize the market. As FORA currently stands, the failure to include the reinstatement layer and to provide coverage for all non-named storms, our carriers will now have to go to the private marketplace to piecemeal costly reinsurance. What FORA has done has provided a car without an engine. Our marketplace, to stay solvent, will have to go out and piecemeal reinsurance. In addition to that, the rate online charged by FORA is more expensive than the private marketplace. The only way our constituents back home are going to see any rate savings as required by law is when insurance companies save money on the cost of reinsurance. This saves and helps insurance companies put their reinsurance plans together. It saves money. And when insurance companies save money on reinsurance, that goes back to our constituents pursuant to Florida statute. This is the only mechanism where our consumers will see immediate relief back in their pockets, and we will stabilize this market. We are here for good policy, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. We are here to stabilize a failing marketplace. This amendment will do just that. I encourage all of you, and I was sad that the responses that I received from the chair of this didn't have the.
Follow up, just close, you're out of time, if you don't mind wrapping it up.
I encourage you all to vote yes.
Having closed on her amendment, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying yay. Yay! Opposed, no? No. Show the amendment fails. Read the next amendment.
Representative Joseph offered the following amendment with title amendment, barcode 333927, remove lines 448 through 601, and insert an amendment.
Representative Joseph, you're recognized to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an amendment of accountability and transparency. The first part of the amendment has to do with making sure that any authorized insurer transacting property insurance business in this state shall be subject to a market conduct examination after the hurricane under the following circumstances. A, they're in the top 20% of insurers in the state. B, they're in the top 20% of consumer complaints within the state. C, they have made significant payments to its managing general agent since the hurricane. Or D, they've been identified by the office as necessitating such a review. This examination of the insurance company must also include an examination of its managing general agent as if it were the insurer. That's the first part of the amendment. You may have heard about stories with companies playing shell games with related companies, parent, sister companies, where they're transferring their profits to one part, and then they're transferring their losses and claiming that they're going out of business to another part. Some of those profits then go to executive compensation of millions and billions of dollars in bonuses. Sometimes they charge exorbitant fees for doing specific subsidiary services, whether it's processing claims, reviewing things, taking in the underwriting, any number of things. They pick a thing and have that sister or related company do the thing, charge higher fees than our market rate, and then pass those charges on to the consumer. So this would give us as legislators an opportunity to have the agency peek under the hood and see what's actually going on and see what that wrongdoing could be. The second part of this
Representative, you
amendment.
can try to wrap up quickly. We're out of time on the opening.
Oh, thank you, sorry. So the second part of the amendment simply makes sure that if there are any changes or doctoring up happening to appraisals, whether it's by the field adjuster's report, engineer, environmental consultant report, that it is shared with the consumer in its unredacted form. That is
Thank
the
you.
amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Are there questions of the sponsor on the amendment? Questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, is there debate? Seeing none, you recognize to close your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've heard a lot about bad actors, and this bill attempts to stabilize the market by addressing so-called bad actors. And one of the things that were identified were AOBs. I think most people in this room would agree that we can get rid of AOBs, but just doing that without addressing bad faith, I think would address the bad actor issue. We do not need to reduce access to courts. What this amendment does is help us to look at bad actors on both sides. When you have David going up against Goliath, we are taking away all of David's pebbles and we're arming Goliath with shields and swords. These appraisals are used as swords to deny Floridians of real compensation that they're entitled to in the claims process. Now, I'm not talking about all insureds. We have some very good insurance companies in the state of Florida. I am focusing on the bad actors. If we're focusing on one group of bad actors, we should focus on all the bad actors, because I would argue that these are the kind of bad actors that are actually driving up premiums. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Opposed, no? No. Show the amendment fails. Read the next amendment.
Representative Edmonds offered the following amendment with title amendment, barcode 951137, remove lines 1367 through 2224, and insert an amendment.
Representative Edmonds, you're recognized to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And also thank you for that tie on our office desk. My amendment, what it does, currently right now, if you're a personal residential customer of Citizens, you can renew your policy with Citizens unless a private insurer offers you a comparable coverage or something less. What this legislation will do is force people to leave Citizens to go with a private insurer that offers coverage that are priced up to 20% higher than their current Citizens premium. The legislation will also make the same change for commercial residential customers of Citizens, i.e. apartment complexes and HOAs. So they too could be forced to switch to private policies that are 20% more expensive. This amendment is a friendly amendment, maybe not to the bill, but to Floridians at least. The amendment goes back to the current policies where Floridians can stay as Citizens unless a private insurer offers you a comparable price or something lower. And that is the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Are there questions of the sponsor? Questions of the sponsor? Is there debate? Seeing none, you're recognized to close on your amendment.
Our goal as lawmakers is to help residents and restore the middle class and working class citizens. When Citizens was formed in 2002, the intent was to be the last resort. But in 2022, post-pandemic, pre-economic depression, Citizens has become one of the best options for residents. In my county, Palm Beach County, as of November 2022, the median listing home was $519,000. The average rent for a studio apartment, $2,000. Citizens does more than just give residents a feasible insurance policy and peace of mind. It also offers residents an access to the American dream, to build equity and potentially create generational wealth. A potential increase of 20% is make or break in my county. That increase could lead to that single parent mom not being able to afford to feed her kids or clothe her children. That potential 20% increase could lead to that working family in my community having to decide between homeowners insurance and car insurance. This amendment will prevent any Floridian who is happy with their insurance from Citizens from being forced into a more expensive insurance plan from a for-profit private corporation. It is anti-freedom to force Floridians into a more expensive plan. And it is particularly very damaging to South Florida residents and working class families. In my county, there is over 100,000 residents who have Citizens policies. If anything, let's get the rates down in the private market, not force Citizens to accept higher costs that cannot afford. And to close, if you read the vision of Citizens, it says we strive to reduce the financial burden of all Floridians by being good stewards of the premium funds entrusted to us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Having closed on the amendment, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying yay. Yay! Opposed, no? No. Show the amendment fails. Seeing 5 hands, the clerk will unlock the machine and members will record their vote. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? The clerk will lock the machine and record and announce the vote.
33 yeas, 82 nays, Mr. Speaker.
Show the amendment fails. Read the next amendment.
Representative Joseph offered the following amendment with directory and title amendments, barcode 050303, remove lines 2422 through 2437, and insert an amendment.
Representative Joseph, you're recognized to explain your amendment.
The speaker might. Thank you. And I just want to echo the colleagues that are coming here to tell them the great job you just did. Be so proud of you. Okay, so costs. This amendment does 2 things. It reduces premium costs for limited coverage. So it requires insurance companies to charge less when they give less coverage. Very simple. Specifically, insurers must include a commensurate premium discount or credit if the insurance policy provides limited coverage or requires the homeowner to get separate coverage in order to qualify for this coverage. So the premium discount credit must provide a substantial credit that is actuarially sound. That's the first part of the amendment. The second thing it does, it ensures that savings go to the Florida policyholder as well as the insurance companies. So this one provides for a 1-year freeze of rates to give consumers some relief now because they need it now, and many of their rates have doubled now, and a decrease in premium of just slightly over 6% for 3 years. So that way, we are giving the consumers a little bit of rate relief right now. That is the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Are there questions of the sponsor? Questions of the sponsor? Is there debate? Seeing none, you're recognized to close on your amendment.
We are here on a property insurance special session. People outside of these chambers think we're doing something to help them. You heard the prayer this morning. He asked us to help them, meaning us, meet the people of Florida at their place of need. The place of need of the people of Florida is the impact of these rates. Last special session, we gave the insurance companies a $2 billion bailout, zero relief for consumers. This special session, another $1 billion, zero for consumers. Listen, nobody wants our market to go underwater, but we can't allow our citizens to go underwater too. We have the money. We can do something to help people now. My mother, her rates doubled this year, retired senior citizen. On my $29,500 salary, I was able to cover the cost of her insurance because she could not. I am sure each and every one of you in your districts have people who are struggling to figure out how they're going to pay their property rates. I'm not saying don't help the insurance companies. I get it. We need to stabilize the market. Let's stabilize it. But can we do something for the people of Florida too? Just a little something. I'm not asking for a lot. I'm asking for a rate freeze for 1 year and then a little decrease after that. And it has to be actuarially sound. We already heard from the bill sponsor that Citizens is already not actually sound. But let's just give a little relief to the people who voted for us, the people who were not told about this special session until after the election because they would see the impact of it. Let's do something for them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Having closed on her amendment, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying yay. Yay. Opposed, no. Show the amendment. Seeing 5 hands, the clerk will unlock the machine. Members will record their vote. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? The clerk will lock the machine and announce the vote.
32 yeas, 84 nays, Mr. Speaker.
Show the amendment fails. Read the next amendment.
Representative Escamani offer the following amendment with title amendment, barcode 898933, between lines 30, 39, and 3040. Insert an amendment.
Representative Escamani, you're recognized to explain your amendment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. We talked about a few favorite parts of the bill. This is without a doubt one of my favorite amendments, and I'm very excited to share with everyone. It is a very simple amendment. It essentially says that any insurance company that raises premiums in Florida cannot grant their CEOs or executives or directors a raise or bonus. There's motivation for this amendment. In fact, I believe some of my Republican colleagues who are very fiscally conservative would agree that bloated salaries and CEOs as premiums go up are inappropriate, unethical, and something we got to pull back. To give some more specifics, the Tampa Bay Times just reported that the CEO of one Tampa-based insurance company, Heritage, paid more than $27 million in one recent year, more than double what State Farm paid its own CEO. We also see a Fort Lauderdale-based insurance company make between $14 million and $25 million every year for their CEO. There is nothing more disgusting than profiteering off the backs of Floridians. So members, I'm asking you to join us in going after voted executive salaries. That's to take money off our constituents. And that is the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Are there questions of the sponsor? Questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, is there debate? Debate. Seeing none, you're recognized to close on your amendment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Members, we want to make sure that we do right by our constituents. I know that the chairman and the sponsor even mentioned that he had some concerns about this component of the insurance marketplace. So many of these salaries are making bloated bonuses and wages during a time where we did not have a lot of hurricanes, and that never adjusted to where we are today. And so for many of the failed insurance companies that left Florida, we cannot dismiss the fact that they were making money off our people, off our constituents. And so we want to do what we can to ensure that if you're going to profit off the backs of our constituents, that at the very least, you don't get to increase your salary, get bonuses out of that. You should be awarded for stabilizing the market. You should be awarded for ensuring that more of our Floridians have access to property insurance, not awarded for denying claims and increasing premiums. And so I do encourage a yes vote on this amendment. Might I say a yes, Kamani, on this amendment? And with that, Mr. Speaker, I close.
Having closed on her amendment, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying yay. Yay! Opposed, no? Show the amendment fails. Read the next amendment.
Representative Driscoll offered the following amendment with title amendment, barcode 674763, between lines 3039 and 3040. Insert an amendment.
Representative Driscoll, you're recognized to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I believe that every Floridian deserves a freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe. You hear me say it quite often. But it's very difficult to be prosperous when you can't afford basic things like your property insurance. What this amendment simply does is add Section 26 to the bill that would cap premiums, either based at the Consumer Price Index, which is set by the U.S. Department of Labor, or on a sliding scale according to what Floridians could pay. And that, Mr. Speaker, is the amendment.
Are there questions of the sponsor? Is there debate? You're recognized to close on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Part of the conversation that we've had during committees this week, I guess that was just yesterday. It's quite a month we've been having this week. Part of the conversation that we had in committees yesterday was that there was a glaring omission from this bill, which is anything that we can look at that directly, concretely provides relief to homeowners in the way of guaranteeing that they will get reduced rates. We've heard it today on the floor. Unfortunately, the bill sponsors cannot guarantee that this will cause rates to go up or down. But if you look at what the industry experts are saying, it's all but guaranteed that property insurance rates are going to increase. This would allow us to give us, this amendment would give us that opportunity to look out for our constituents and to guarantee for policies that are written after January 1st, 2024, on or after January 1st, 2024, would have that cap. Members, we can do that today. We can provide that rate cap. We can make sure that property insurance is affordable for our constituents. I urge you to join me in voting up on this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Having closed on the amendment, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying yay. Yay. Opposed, no. No. Seeing 5 hands, the clerk will unlock the machine and members will proceed to vote. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? The clerk will lock the machine and announce the vote.
32 yeas, 84 nays, Mr. Speaker.
Show the amendment fails. Read the next amendment.
None on the desk, Mr. Speaker.
Show the bill rolled over for third reading. Representative Leak, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the rules be waived and Senate Bill 2A be read a third time by title and placed on final passage.
Representative Leak moves that the rules be waived and SB 2A be read a third time by title and placed for final passage. All in favor say yay. Yay. Opposed, no. Show the motion is adopted. Read the bill a third time by title.
By Senator Boyd, Senate Bill 2A, a bill to be entitled an act relating to property insurance.
Are there amendments?
None on the desk, Mr. Speaker.
Members, we're going into structured debate on SB 2A. Debate will be limited to 80 minutes per side, 10 minutes in increments. Total debate time not to exceed 160 minutes. Representative Hunchofsky, you're the floor manager, and you're recognized to begin in debate, and the clerk will start the debate clock. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Marie Woodson.
Representative Woodson, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, Chair Leak, Chair Rommel, and colleagues. We are here again today to address a very and extremely important issue that we all agree on. And that issue is the people of Florida need relief. If we don't agree on anything else, we know that all of us, we agree on that one. There are so many people struggling in our state to afford the premiums and also to find coverage. If we don't act now, and I know that we are working on some long-term solutions, but we really need some short-term ones. I will tell you that I received a call prior to coming up here from one of my constituents, and I have received many calls. Miss Maddie called me and said, Representative Woodson, I want you to speak to your colleagues and let them know that I have worked all my life to buy this home. And at this time, I cannot afford to pay for the premiums and I'm going to lose my home. Guess what? If we don't agree, if we don't come up with a short-term solution right now, we are going to pay a lot more on the back end. I will tell you that I have so many people who are slated to be homeless as a result of not being able to afford the premiums. And you know what happened? When we have constituents who are homeless, it translates into more money from the pocket of the state because we have to pay to find them a place to stay. We have to pay for healthcare. We have to pay for so much more. We can come up with some quick fixes. And it would have been so great because we know we have a $22 billion in reserve. What do we have reserve from? We have reserve for crisis, for emergency. And my colleagues, this is a crisis. Would it cost us a lot to just really get a few billions from this $22 billion and really subsidize the premiums for our homeowners for short-term solutions? And I'm not asking to subsidize it for a long time. I'm just asking for a short period of time that we can do that in order to provide some relief to Miss Maddie and so many others in Florida. This week, we will be remembered by what we do here to improve the availability of affordable property insurance and businesses in Florida. Many in our state will not have a second chance. They would not have a second opportunity to keep their homes or businesses due to costs and limited choices. We need to ensure the same protection that we have, the same protective policies proposed for insurance companies are available to our homeowners as well, to lessen the burden on the homeowners in Florida. We need to protect the interests of homeowners. Yes, changes are needed to give confidence to insurance companies doing business in Florida, but we cannot forget the families who continue to pay high premiums and cannot really afford to make ends meet. This bill is the beginning of a foundation for relief for some, but must need to be done in subsequent legislation because I know we can tell how it's going to go, but we need to come up with meaningful legislation as well to impact the life of Floridians. Let's have Miss Maddie's back. And I'm begging you for this one. Let's try to come up with some solutions, to some quick fixes that can really help the people of Florida. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the opportunity to talk. And I hope that I can go back home and look at Miss Mattis in the face and say, Miss Mattis, my colleagues and I, we had your back and we're bringing you some quick reliefs. Thank you.
Representative Hunchowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Williams in debate.
Representative Williams, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the freshmen of the bunch in the back, look around at our chambers so you can see who's concerned about our citizens. It has been mentioned that several of the carriers are leaving or have left the state of Florida. I'm here to tell you, I'm not concerned about those carriers that have left the state of Florida. We represent people across the state of Florida that's struggling. Those are the people that I'm concerned about. Those are the people that I'm here to speak for. They work hard. The Floridians pays their expensive premiums for decades and never files a claim. But once a claim is filed, the insurance company always find a way to wiggle from under it, either not paying the policy, paying half of the policies, or dropping the taxpayers or the homeowners. Once that is done, it seems to me that last session and also this session, that we're giving a gift to the insurance company and we're punishing the homeowners. It has been said that we are giving the people something. We giving the people hope. But I stand before you today and tell you, hope don't pay a bill. We can do better. We must do better. We must find a way to give release to the struggling taxpayers, the people that voted for us to be here, the people that's struggling right now, the people that's crying out. We must find a way to give them some relief.
Representative Hunchowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We yield back the rest of the time just in this 10-minute block.
Representative Hunchowski yields back the remaining 2 minutes of her block. Leader Grant, you're recognized for debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please recognize Representative Gina Lombardo in debate?
Representative Gina Lombardo, you're recognized for debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chair Leak and Rommel that are in the back eating. So I'm not an attorney. I don't speak the language. But I will tell you, yesterday when I was in Commerce, I saw a lot of folks come up and my heart goes out to them. They went through Michael. They lost their home. And there was a lot of reference to the right side of the room. Oh, they're just voting no on all the amendments, or just going to vote up on it, and that's it. We're out of touch. Well, I'm here to tell you that I'm out of Lee County. The eye of the storm went dead center over my home. Right, 12 hours. And I didn't leave. My wife, my kids, 150 plus mile an hour winds, ripping off my shutters during the eye. I got out of my house and had to screw in my shutters back. So, and I'm just about a mile away from Matlacha, what at the time was Representative Botana's district, which had 12 feet of water. So that's the reality of it. So to say that we're not paying attention, we're out of touch. Now, previous to this, we are in an insurance crisis. Everybody knows that here. That's why we're here. This is why we're dealing with it. And the day after the storm, there's door knockers, adjusters, roofers. I mean, they did not waste a moment of time knocking on people's doors. We didn't have power for 2 weeks. Not a moment. My neighbor comes to me and he goes, "Hey, I just, I signed a contract to get my roof done." I was like, "Oh, how much you pay?" He's like, "I don't know." I'm like, Well, you probably should know that. And they said, no, they just handle it through the insurance company. I said, you mean assignment of benefits? And he was like, no. The guy said it wasn't assignment of benefits. I read it, not a lawyer again. That was assignment of benefits. Luckily, I was able to help him get out of that. This happens constantly. Just this, a couple days after that, we were having town halls and doing all these events to try to get awareness. People were asking for assistance and help and small business and all that. And I go to this church, not knowing what to expect. And there's a big bus from a law firm that says Disaster Relief Center. How misleading is that? That actually happened. That was recent for me. So I go in there. There's restoration companies and roofing companies. There was more of them than there was my constituents. They're just frothing at the mouth, looking at the dollar signs walking through that door. We get up there. I didn't realize who I was on the panel with. It was an attorney, adjuster, a roofer, disaster cleanup. And I'm sitting here, and I'm glad that they let me speak first, but I stood up and I said, so you're going to hear a lot of information today. Just remember, every single person on this panel is in business to make money. That's why they're here. As much as they want to say, oh, we'll do complimentary inspections and all, they are in the business to make money. They're not doing it for free, because yesterday we heard a lot of, oh, we're advocating and all this. Yeah, you're advocating. You're paid a lot of money. And 8 cents of every dollar goes to the actual homeowner, right? The homeowner to fix their stuff. The rest of it goes to legal, admin. Who's got the bloated salaries now? We have to fix that problem. That's the problem. I get 200 emails a week about what are we going to do with the insurance crisis? What are we going to? I can't get insurance. I can't do this. Insurance companies are in the business to make money too. If they can't make money here, if they can't stay solvent, they're gone. It's a business decision. If they're gone, we have less pull to get insurance from, which supply and demand tells me that it's going to go up. Facts. This bill fixes that, right? This bill, AOB, one-way attorney's fees, these are the problems. There's a whole host of other things that I would love to bring up, but this is the immediate need now. We have to, the pendulum was one way for a long time. Billions. Attorneys made lots of money, right? We have to balance it out now. So I ask you, vote yes. A vote yes will help stable our market, which translates into a stable market, decreased rates. Insurance companies, we tell them how much they make. They're not, it's not a free-for-all. We have regulations that tell them how much they make. So to say all these, they're going to make a killing, and all I heard when I was on that panel is how the insurance companies are the bad actors. They're this, they're that. That's a sales pitch. That is a sales pitch. Listen, I sell software. I know what a sales pitch when I see one. So you can't, don't fool me. Don't fool our constituents. Own up to it and know that the Wild West is over. We have to get back to reality. We have to help our constituents. We have to help the people, the citizens of Florida, with a stable market, which will translate into reduced rates in the future. Thank you. Please vote up on this bill.
Leader Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We yield the remainder of our time in this block.
Leader Grant yielding the remainder of his time in this block. We'll call on Representative Hunchusky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Harris in debate.
Representative Harris, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to start out by saying that I am very honored and proud to serve the people of Florida's House District 44. And when this special session was called, I saw it as a moment where we could work together to do something to help the people of Florida with their rising costs of property insurance. And I know I'm echoing some points of my colleagues, but I have also spoken with a lot of my constituents, and they are asking for a way to find a lower cost of their property insurance. And they're asking for that as soon as possible. They've repeatedly spoken to how this is impacting their ability to keep money in their pockets. This crisis also has an effect on rental costs. As we know, those are very high, and landlords often have to pass the increase on their property insurance down to their tenants. Unfortunately, this bill isn't going to address their concerns. And in fact, instead of reducing costs, it's going to force some of my constituents to pay up to 20% more for their property insurance while potentially receiving less coverage. Additionally, it's going to make it difficult for consumers to hold insurance companies accountable when they aren't living up to their end of the bargain by making it so costly and cumbersome to litigate when necessary. I'm not in favor of reducing a consumer's access to the courts. In some cases, it's the only option they have. This bill isn't what my constituents are looking for. And therefore, as much as I want to find a bipartisan solution to this crisis that this state finds itself right now, I will be voting no on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Hanchowski in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Valdez in debate.
Representative Valdez, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I appreciate the time that we've spoken about this bill. I appreciate the chairmans that have brought it forward. And I got to tell you a little bit about District 64. In District 64, the median income is $43,951. If you look at the per capita income, it's $22,154. Those are the constituents that I serve. And having this bill not bring relief, actual relief to our constituents, and they're your constituents as well, because we all serve every Floridian in this great state. By not being able to bring a specific relief to these constituents right now, all we're doing again is kicking that can along. I know that we did some great work in May, where we have actually been reported that litigation has gone down by 30%. By the same token, we haven't allowed that particular policy to take into effect even longer so we can see the actual impact of the work that we did in May. I'm going to talk to you about Mr. Machado. Mr. Machado, a gentleman in my district who was impacted by Irma. Not whole yet. Not whole yet. So I appreciate the fact that we're focusing on these two recent storms that have devastated our areas. But what about those others that are still pending? That are still tied up in trying to get their leaky roofs fixed. We heard earlier today that we would stabilize the market. Yet when asked if this would help stabilize the market, it was stated again that they're not sure. We talked about having hope, that we hope that once this piece of legislation goes into effect, we hope that it will help our constituents. Our constituents need help now. They can't depend on hope that maybe a year from now you're going to find release, because my constituents, what's going to wind up happening, most likely, it's going to be a lot of foreclosures, a lot of bankruptcies, and a lot of homelessness. Members, because of this, I have to vote down on this bill because there's no immediate relief right now for our constituents. Thank you.
Representative Hunchowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Henson in debate.
Representative Henson, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I congratulate you on your rise to Speaker Pro Tem. Mr. Speaker, you know more than anyone else in this room, especially except me, the constituents I serve, because you're my neighbor, you're right next door. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in times of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. This legislation puts homeowners on the hook for everything. They will make hiring an attorney so cumbersome and costly that most homeowners will not be able to afford it. In addition to the burdensome costs they already have due to the damage of their property and the rising costs of premiums. During the last special session, we approved a $2 billion payout to property insurance companies struggling to obtain enough insurance for reinsurance. These companies received funds by they were supposed to reduce their rates in an attempt to lower premiums paid by consumers. However, while insurance companies are getting millions from RAP, policyholders are seeing little to no premium reduction and, in some cases, seeing their policies canceled or their premiums doubled or tripled. For example, United Property and Casualty Insurance received $167 million from the RAP program. The company announced recently that it would no longer offer property insurance in Florida and that its more than 140,000 policies would be canceled in May of 2023, according to OIR. At the same time, United Property and Casualty Insurance is struggling to cover its Florida policies. By the way, it has paid its CEO more than $4.2 million in annual salaries since 2017. Where's the justice in that? I must ask, where's the justice in that? Who do we owe? Do we owe these policies, this money to our companies, or do we owe our citizens that we're sent here to represent? Who do we owe? That is why I attempted to pose an amendment on 4A that somehow got attached to 2A, setting up a one-time bailout to our citizens of a certain income and demographic when their property insurance doubles or triples due to this current insurance crisis, rendering them hopefully able to keep their homes. I do hope we can take some relief back home with us to our citizens whom we were elected to serve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hunchowski, you're recognized in further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Hart in debate.
Representative Hart, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know that time is short and I don't have much to say other than the fact that we are not giving our homeowners any relief. We cannot sit here in these chambers and say we're here for the people and provide nothing. This morning, I got several calls from constituents wanting to know, well, Rep, what are you all doing? What will this bill do for us? This bill will do nothing for the homeowner. You know, we must admit, it limits the homeowner's rights. It repeals recent reforms that was to help decrease litigation, creates unnecessary and costly burdens for policyholders. We must, legislators, we've got to do something for the people. We owe it to them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Grant, you're recognized to further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please recognize Representative Masulo in debate?
Before I recognize Representative Masulo, I would like to recognize Senator Boyd entering the chamber. Welcome back to the House, Senator Boyd. Representative Masulo, you're recognized for debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm glad we're here, and we're here for a very, very important reason. We're here, as we are every day that we step into this chamber, is to help our constituents and make Florida a better place. And we're doing that today. We're doing that now. We've been doing that since we got here on Monday. I take a little bit of an issue that we're not doing anything for our constituents. That's an extreme comment that truly isn't based on facts. So I'm going to go over some facts of the way I see this bill, and I'm going to share that with you. And I think that it's going to be the same way when I stand up here again for another bill, that I will go over those same types of facts and why. So what does this bill do? What is our purpose in standing here today? What is our purpose in sitting in those seats? Our purpose is to lower the cost of homeowners insurance for the people of Florida. And we do that. Why are we doing that? Because Florida's homeowners insurance is extremely expensive and the market is deteriorating. It's literally falling apart. And in some places, there's not even a market. Fortunately, we have Citizens, which, as you've heard through the eloquent conversations and question answering of Representative Rommel and Representative Leak, is truly the option of last resort for our citizens. The market is deteriorating, and in time, if we don't act, there won't be a market. So what can we do? First of all, it's important in whatever problem we look at is to determine why it's a problem. Why do we have a problem in this state? Chair Leak, in his first couple minutes that he explained the bill to you, said that Florida has about 7% of all the claims for property insurance in the country. And yet we have between 70 and 78 or 79% of the litigation. That is probably the largest cost driver in what we're doing to try to bring down that cost. So why is that? We've addressed that in this bill. We have addressed assignment of benefits. We've addressed bad actors. We've addressed fraud. And we have provided many consumer protections by lowering timeframes and allowing consumers to access OIR better because we're increasing the positions in OIR to be able to respond to those consumers' issues. Now, is that going to bring the cost down immediately? No, but it will stabilize the market. And as the market is stabilized and as those costs reduce, what it will do that we sort of lose track of, it'll bring more individual companies into the market. It'll bring more investors into those companies. The state will profit from that cost shift because we don't get anything from Citizens. They don't pay any tax, and our state supports them. The less policies we have at Citizens, the better our state does. Another cost driver is the fact that we are a peninsula. We are affected by hurricanes. And some might think, well, we're not addressing that in this bill, and we're not. But this legislature and Governor DeSantis has prioritized resilience in our state. And as some of you know that have been here before, we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars to make our state more resilient, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that long after all of us are gone. We can't change the weather, but we can try to make our state stronger to be able to endure it. And we're doing that. This isn't a perfect bill, and you'll never hear a perfect bill presented in this legislature because they don't exist. But this is a good bill, and it's a good bill for our citizens, and it will reduce cost. And I encourage you all to vote up on it.
Representative Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We yield the remainder of our time in this segment.
Leader Grant yielding the remainder of his time. Representative Hunchusky for the next segment of our debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Nixon in debate.
Representative Nixon, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is a bad bill. It does nothing to help Floridians, our constituents, the customers of these insurance companies. The calls, the emails, there's a ton of communication that I received about folks having a hard time getting their claims paid by insurance companies, and it's just absurd. Homeowners' first resort isn't to go to attorneys. It's simply to be made whole, to probably get their largest asset that they'll ever have fixed. Insurance companies are doing the opposite of serving their clients. They're dragging their feet in efforts to lowball customers or flat out denying claims that deserve to be paid out. And now this bill is making it harder for people to access the courts to get their houses and homes fixed and to be made whole once again. This is our second special session this year, our second. Each time us in the back rows, we've offered up amendments, a bill that work to not only create stability in this insurance market, but to protect consumers that are our constituents, that have already been forced to stretch their paychecks due to inflation. Our constituents who are now at risk of losing their homes that they can't afford because the cost of their insurance is now increasing by hundreds of dollars. I am so confused that folks that turn to Citizens as the last resort, which is still high, by the way, are now being forced to go and they're now being mandated to purchase flood insurance that they may not need, especially if they don't live in a flood zone or even near a body of water. Heck, some may not even live in an area that floods at all. I know that one of the sponsors stated that it's not the responsibility of this bill to take into consideration of the finances of homeowners and consumers. But I'm telling you that Floridians have been begging all of us here to take into consideration their finances and their ability to remain in their homes. I know we have some millionaires in here, and that is amazing, but the median household income in the state of Florida is $61,000. That means there are some people that make a lot less than that. My property is currently insured by Citizens. I decided to go ahead and see how much it would cost to get flood insurance. And I was quoted, the lowest amount was $2,300 to $2,700 a year. That's absurd. For some people, because basically that breaks down to $191 or $225 a month. For some people, that means they will be forced to leave their homes. That's pretty messed up. And again, this is the second property insurance special session this year. We aren't addressing the exorbitant rates that folks are suffering from. We didn't address the fact that HB 2D that we passed prior didn't really do anything to keep homeowners from not being renewed because of their roofs on their homes are 15 years old, right? We did expand the special session to include toll roads, and then I offer a discount for some Floridians, but again, that's some Floridians, not all. Everybody isn't using a toll road, but everyone has to live in a home. And the fact that the cost of insurance rates are not being addressed here is a slap in the face to all Floridians, especially since we are offering yet another bailout to insurance companies in the amount of $1 billion. $1 billion. And we just offered them $2 billion before. Please vote this bill down.
Representative Hunchofsky, further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Eskamani in debate.
Representative Eskamani, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members, for your attention, your time. Thank you to the chair and his PrimeCo. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that despite your political affiliation, we each want to solve this problem. It impacts each one of our communities. Whether we're inland, like I am in District 42, or you're coastal, every single Floridian is facing increased costs, not just in property insurance, just in general. And I know as a renter, my rent went up, and so many of our renters, their costs are also tied to property insurance. So these issues are all impacting our constituents. And I know it's something that across the aisle we agree needs to be solved. I think where the disagreement lies is how we're getting there. And I do have some concerns that were lifted up in my Q&A, but I'm just going to go through them very quickly of why, unfortunately, I have to be down on this bill. So first of all, there's no guarantee that savings will actually happen. And we've already talked about this, and I love hope. I voted for President Obama, hope and change, but we know that hope does not pay the bills, right? And I also appreciate the intention of mitigation, but at the end of the day, is mitigation more designed for the industry, or is it designed for the consumer? I want to make sure that both experience positive results from this bill, and I am concerned that because we don't have a cap, because we don't have any type of guarantee of savings, there's no data to back up that people will pay less. It concerns me that we're not actually delivering what we said we would. Second, stripping away access to the courts and not enough accountability measures. I do appreciate the favorite part of the bill for our sponsor, but I am concerned that in the case of hurricanes where money claims come out of, there is no reduction of timeline. That seems like a carve out that is not going to be the best interest of our constituents. I also just want to give some brief history to the existence of one-way attorney fees. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I do read case law. And it was a former justice of the Florida State Supreme Court who wrote in a 1999 ruling in a case with Allstate of why one-way attorney fees exist. To make a long story short, a woman in South Florida was hit by a car. She had medical expenses. She tried to get Allstate to pay. Allstate wouldn't, and she took them to court, and she won. And the only reason why she was able to take them to court was because of the one-way attorney fee. She would not have been able to challenge that situation. And that's health insurance, Mr. Speaker. But I am concerned that when we eliminate one-way attorney fees on property insurance, what's going to stop the supermajority from doing it on health, on auto, and so forth? And then we continue to go down this path of stripping away consumer rights for Floridians. It was already mentioned before, but we are essentially taking away the slingshot from David and giving Goliath all the tools that he wants. The third area that I want to lift up is with our citizens, consumers. I understand that we want to depopulate citizens. I would just prefer to do that once we actually know these tools are reducing costs, because right now you are just pushing citizen customers into the danger zone with very high rates and putting flood insurance on them, which you're not requiring for private customers, which seems weird to me. And so again, I'm just worried that when you do that, you're just going to push people into dire economic situations, and we're going to get calls because folks are going to be shocked to get that increase or to be forced to go to a more expensive private provider. I've gotten many emails from constituents like everyone else. Actually, right when I was on the House floor, I got an email from someone in Rockledge concerned about what we're working on and asking, can we force the governor or the insurance commissioner to pressure insurance companies? Can we have caps? These are the questions that constituents are asking, and I'm sad to see that the bill doesn't include any of those types of tools. I do want to highlight that the Democratic caucus, we offered you alternatives, we offered you amendments, we offered you our AAA plan for affordability, availability, and accountability, and it was denied. And so please remember that we have ideas. I know we're in the super minority, but we have ideas. Each one of us were elected to help work on these issues alongside you. So please, let's fight for solutions together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Grant, to further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please recognize Representative Fabricio in debate?
Representative Fabricio, you're recognized to further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it's been all rehashed over and over again, so I'm not going to take a lot of your time. As you all know, we are in an insurance crisis, and we all know that the insurance crisis has largely been caused by the exorbitant amount of litigation that we've had in the state. We've been talking about this for years, and it's been happening. The changes that are taking place because of this bill, once we get this bill passed, are going to put us on the road to resolving that problem. It's going to, but that elimination of the one-way attorney's fee statute is huge. It's going to signal to the reinsurance carriers that we in Florida don't tolerate this exorbitant amount of litigation that's causing premiums to go up. This bill, it's going to take time to take full effect, but this is really what we need to do. One of the things that this bill does that I don't think has been mentioned enough is it supports one of our biggest consumer advocates in the insurance industry, and those are the insurance agents. The insurance agents over the last few years, because of this crisis, have been inundated with trying to place risk, trying to get insurance policies for people. One of the things that this bill does is it expands, it allows the OIR to expand the time that an insurance agent has to be able to place that risk. These insurance agents are your number one advocates. One of the members of the other party said earlier today that, oh, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to file a suit. We have to go to court. Yeah, that's fine. But why don't you call your insurance agent first? If your insurance carrier hasn't reached out to you, they haven't done the right thing yet, call your insurance agent. You should have a relationship with these folks. These are people in the community that work for you to try to place that risk for you. And it's in their best interest to be able to make sure that you have the right coverage. Reach out to them. They work for you. This bill helps them place insurance risk, your risk, in a better place. Thank you very much. It's a good bill. Vote it up.
Representative Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We yield the remainder of our time.
Representative Grant yielding the remainder of his time. Representative Hunchofsky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Gant in debate.
Representative Gant, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday morning, my phone chimed at 7:24 a.m., indicating that I got a new text message. And when I read the message, it was from a constituent. And she told me she's very worried about her property insurance and to please do something. As a newly elected official and an ambassador for my home community, I take it seriously that we are here to provide a service to those who elected us, to our neighbors and our families. When asked a direct question about if there was anything that would provide rate reduction for the consumer in this bill, we were told that this gives hope. If this bill is passed, I doubt that my constituents can write a check to their insurance companies in the form of a payment of hope. This bill does not provide relief for rate increases or provide a reduction for the same. When asked about the use of the PFS or the proposal for settlements, a tool used to ensure a fair and balanced process in litigation, the response was that it wasn't being used effectively. Because of the lack of effective use of a tool, this bill will limit consumers' access to the court. One-way attorneys' fees exist so that we eliminate the inequity of access to attorneys and the court for the consumer when they are going up against insurance companies. The reality is that this bill does not limit rate increases, and it has zero provisions for those on fixed incomes. Disabled veterans, retirees, compose a large portion of my constituency, and they will be forced to choose between food or shelter. And I guess if they lived in a gingerbread house, it would make sense, but they don't. So I implore each of you to vote no on this bill, because I will be voting no on this bill because it does not serve my constituency or the people in the state of Florida. Thank you.
Representative Hunchowski, you're recognized to further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Skidmore in debate.
Representative Skidmore, you're recognized for debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really appreciate all of the information and all of the debate that my colleagues are providing. So I'm going to be very quick. There's an old joke that 70% of all statistics are made up on the spot by 64% of the people that provide false statistics 54% of the time. I've heard the statistic that 76 to 79% of all litigation is coming out of Florida. I refuse to believe that nearly 80% of Floridians are choosing to go to litigation because they're greedy. I believe we have these high cases of litigation because the insurance companies are denying the claims that are legitimate claims of our people. There are good things about this bill, and I do applaud everyone's hard work. Chairman Leake, thank you so much. You are a gentleman and a scholar, and you have been great about explaining all of this to us. I think we should get rid of AOB. I don't disagree with that. I think flood insurance is a problem when our constituents don't have it and didn't know they needed it. But I think that it's problematic when we require it, especially if you live on the 40th floor of a condominium. There are things that we could do better. My caucus, we offered you other suggestions and other things that we could do. We want bipartisan products out of this chamber. Please give us an opportunity to do that with you. I will vote no today, and I will make a commitment that I will never stop trying to work with you to solve this property insurance crisis. Thank you very much.
Representative Hunchowski to further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Driscoll in debate.
Leader Driscoll, you're recognized for debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nice to see you up there. You know, members, we heard a lot today about stabilizing the markets. What about stabilizing checkbooks? And I think quite a lot about the constituents who sent us here, the constituents who came and testified before committee yesterday. What was impressive to me and striking to me is that there were folks on both sides. There were some who testified, you know, about the candidates that they voted for, and it wasn't all of the same party. And I thought that was beautiful because that's how government is supposed to work, right? We derive our power from the people, regardless of whether or not they voted for us, right? We're here to represent them. And this is a crisis that is affecting all Floridians across all zip codes and beyond just the immediate two storms that we're focused on in this legislation. We could be doing so much better if we acted more broadly. And I too commend Chair Leake. This is tough, complex stuff. He's been at it since we were freshmen. And I imagine he'll continue to work on it beyond. But it's a crisis that we inherited because of prior inaction by the legislature or legislatures who weren't willing to do the tough things that it would take to do to fix the market and to hold insurance companies truly accountable. There's a balance to be struck here, but this bill misses the mark. We've offered amendment after amendment after amendment. Let me tell you what I think are a few of the more tragic aspects of this bill to me. The first is with respect to citizens and that pretty much guaranteed rate increase that policyholders and citizens are going to have if they stay there or if they have a private insurer who offers them up to 20% more. 20% more. Those are real dollars. And Representative Edmonds offered an amendment that we could have accepted to save ourselves and to save our constituents from that. But we failed. The other piece is with respect to access to the courts. And I do believe that the changes with attorneys' fees will have an adverse impact on access to the courts. It's just not a level playing field between the homeowner and the big insurance companies. And believe me, I'm a lawyer. I know sometimes the little guy's not always right. Sometimes the big guy's not always right. But what I know absolutely is right is making sure that a homeowner has a pathway to hold that insurance company accountable that would not break their bank. I'm very concerned about these new arbitration provisions. I'm very concerned. We heard some questioning earlier about what choice of law or governing law will be in these contracts. And does it mean that a homeowner from Florida will have to arbitrate in New York or Delaware or somewhere else? I've heard anecdotal evidence of arbitration cases being held out of state involving Florida property insurers. So that really is something that we might have to come back and revisit if it turns out that that is the case and what people are facing. I believe that homeowners insurance for Floridians should be, my caucus believes that it should be affordable, available, and accountable. We can do this if we work together, and I hope we do continue working together during regular session, but we've unfortunately missed the mark today. I'll be down on the bill, and I encourage you all to be down as well. Thank you.
Representative Hunchofsky to further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are yielding the remainder of the time in this block.
Having yielded the remainder of the time in the block, Leader Grant to further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Duggan in debate.
Representative Duggan, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Looking good up there. Members, I just want to start by observing that there does not seem to be any dispute that we have a crisis on our hands. Yesterday in the Commerce Committee meeting, two of my Democratic colleagues, one said, described it as a disaster of a property insurance market in Florida, and another one acknowledged that the property insurance market is in crisis. There also does not seem to be any dispute about the data and analysis that we've been provided around the contours of that crisis. We all hopefully listened to the legislator university briefings. Nobody has seemed to call any of that data or analysis into question. The 1 in 100 storm year exposure of citizens is $13 billion. The total exposure of all policy limits for all policies of citizens is $409 billion. We are all on the hook for that. All of our constituents are on the hook for that. Now, there has been, the critics of this legislation have nicely rhetorically framed it as either or. It's either market stability or rate relief for premium rate relief for consumers. Members, this legislation is both and. This legislation will create stability, market stability. That will create supply. Supply will create competition. Competition will create lower rates. Yes, unfortunately, it will take some time. We're not going to be able to just flip a switch, but it took us years to get here. So we're going to have to do the hard work to get out of this problem. And that's what we are doing today. This bill makes a major substantive contribution to that effort. I urge each of you to be up on it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Leader Grant, you're recognized. Further debate.
Thank you, Speaker. We yield the remainder of our time in this segment.
Leader Grant yielding the remainder of his time. Representative Hunchofsky to further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Benjamin in debate.
Representative Benjamin, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask myself, on whose urgency are we here today? Who truly called us to special session? I submit to you that it was the people. I submit to you that the people called out to us and they said that we recognize that property insurance in the state of Florida is in a state of emergency. And our emergency is that we can't afford insurance today. Our emergency is that we can't afford insurance today. I joined this legislature in changing and making reforms to our insurance industry in our last special session. In our last special session, we had bipartisan support in bills to reform our industry. We came together with FJA and we provided an attorney fee structure that made sense. If you get a benefit to your client, you get attorney's fees. If you don't, you don't. The reason why one-way attorney's fees exist is because of inequities in the ability to provide legal counsel. Our system recognizes that when on issues that are so important, that legal counsel is important, we must afford both sides the opportunity to competent counsel. And when one side can't afford it, we then initiated one-way attorney's fees. So now, one-way attorney's fees became the sacrificial lamb. And after last session, that sacrifice began to pay off. We had a 30% decrease in litigation because we also told AOBs, y'all can't get attorney's fees anymore. That helped. The reform that we did in our last session actually began to do what we hoped that it would, reform industry. So why are we back? We're back because the people said that wasn't enough. The people said, we need assistance now. My insurance rates are high now. We have come now to this session and we've offered them again, no immediate, no direct benefit. We've again slaughtered the lamb of attorney's fees. So now they will get no attorney's fees and they will either suffer the cost of attorneys up front or the back end through fees in which the attorney will take part of their reward and they still won't have enough money to fix that roof. That's what contingency fees do. We have still failed in this legislation to make our policyholders whole again. That's the whole purpose of the civil law, is to make people whole again. The purpose of this special session should have been to give our policyholders the immediate relief that they've called for. Instead, we've once again given the insurance companies a windfall. Everything that you see in this bill is a benefit to the insurance carriers. Point to one thing in this bill that's a direct and immediate relief to the policyholders. So when you go back home to your constituents, they're going to ask you, what did you do for us today? What did you do for us for today? And the answer must be and will be a resounding no. And for that reason, I'm down.
Representative Hunchofsky to further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Joseph in debate.
Representative Joseph, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We believe that insurance should be available to all, affordable, and that those providing it should be able to be held accountable. There was a comment earlier that made reference to folks on the right side of the room as being out of touch. That didn't come from the mouth of any of our members. That was the members of the public. So if that's what you're perceiving, that's what they're saying. That's not us. Somebody made reference to a lot of these people being in the business to make money. Well, so are insurance companies. That's the point, right? And nobody doesn't want insurance companies to make money. That's not the issue. The issue is right now we have an insurance health market that is sick. And instead of treating the source of the sickness, we're trying to blame the doctors. Nobody wants to go to an attorney to deal with their claim. If they file their claim and the insurance company pays it out, guess what? That's it. To the advice of contact the agent, I personally have been on the phone with people contacting agents and brokers to try to figure out what to do with their policy. And they're like, sorry, those are the rates. Our hands are tied. And I'm trying to explain to people what the value of their coverage actually is, not just coverage for the sake of having coverage for your mortgage, but coverage for the sake of what's the replacement value of my home. Nobody's asking for a handout. We're talking about premiums that our citizens in this state put their hard-earned dollars towards to pay the premiums. And the reason they pay the premiums is because they expect that insurance to be available for use to them when they need it. That's the point of insurance. So if you're sitting here busting your butt to save this money, to pay these premiums, and then when you need that help, because we live in Florida, we know hurricanes are coming, it's not a surprise. It's not a question of if, it's when. So you do what you can. Now you show up. You're little David, and you're going up against Goliath. They got all these lawyers. They're not worried about attorney's fees. They can pay all the lawyers they want. They can pay all the expert witnesses they want. They could pay whoever they need to deny your claim. And a lot of times they do. We have some good actors, but we're talking about bad actors. But what I noticed in this chamber is we only talk about one group of actors. We want to paint the doctors as the boogeymen. If people show up and go see a lawyer like Representative Cassell or Representative Benjamin because they're having a problem with their claim, it's not because they want to. It's because they have no other choice. We've heard testimony from countless witnesses in not only who call our offices, but in the committee hearings. And I feel like they fell on deaf ears. And it's like y'all don't want to hear it. So I'm just going to re-echo their words. They don't go to lawyers because they want to. They go because they have to. And the little tools that they have are things like one-way attorney's fees and bad faith. And the reason we have it is because it's such an uneven playing field. We keep talking about balance. Well, your scale is off because you're putting the wrong things on the scale. You know what should be on the scale? The needs of the people of Florida. That should be on the scale. That should be the beginning and the end of our inquiry. And I don't mind helping any kind of lobby, company, or whoever make their money, but not on the backs of the people of Florida. It ain't right. Hope is nice, but hope don't pay a bill, baby. And these people gotta pay bills. Let me let you in on a little inside scoop. Somebody mentioned business decision. When some of these companies are trying to figure out when they're going to pay out a claim or how they're going to pay out a claim, they look at not just the value of the claim. So if your house costs $500,000, they look at how much it's going to cost to litigate it. And if it's cheaper to litigate it, guess what? They'll litigate it. Not all of them. You'll find some good actors in the business, but that's what a business decision is. It's going to cost me $100,000 to pay my attorneys and experts to deny your claim. That's going to save me money from paying out your $500,000 claim. So we'll offer you maybe $50,000 that is not going to replace your $500,000 house. That's the inside scoop. Do we care? I'm all about addressing the issues with bad actors. Nobody's a fan of AOBs here. Deal with the bad actors, but we can't be picking winners and losers in this space. There are bad actors on both sides, and one side is way more out of balance than the other. So I'm just saying, if it's good for the goose, it should be good for the gander. Let's address all bad actors and not buy into this boogeyman of litigation. Last thing I'll say is that we were talking about how it would be 8
Representative
cents.
Joseph,
Yes.
your time has expired. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've heard that people say that right now, people get 8 cents on the dollar of every claim. Now it's going to be 5 cents because they're not even going to get those little attorney's fees that they used to get before. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, welcome back to the Florida House. Senator Blaise Ngolia. Welcome back to the Florida House. Leader Grant to further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please recognize Representative LaMarca in debate?
Representative LaMarca, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank your leader for pronouncing my name like my mother does. Members, we've heard a lot about putting Floridians first, and I think that's why we're here. I want to talk just for a brief second on the momentum that this market has been moving in, and obviously we made some great strides back in May, and then we had Hurricane Ian and Hurricane Nicole. This bill, as you're going to hear later, these bills address something that's really important to the folks who live on the coast, and that's the beach renourishment piece, and we'll talk about that. But really what got my attention and why I rose to speak was a comment about flood insurance. And I'm not sure if you're aware or not, Mr. Ghost from you would be wise to have flood insurance, whether you're in a flood zone or not. And I'm going to tell you why. And that's that flood insurance is somewhere in between $500 to $700 on the coast in Broward County. I'm not sure how it could be 4 or 5 times that somewhere inland in North Florida. That being said, it is a wise investment. Whether this bill changes the function of citizens requiring to have it or not, it's something that I'm always going to buy. It's the cheapest investment that I hope, God willing, never have to use. A goal here is that our market, that I can pick from a market that I can choose from whatever company I want. That being said, whether I'm with Citizens like I am now for wind or a private company, I'm always going to keep flood insurance on the property. And I just want to clarify that I've never heard rates like that, but certainly different areas provide different rates. But it's certainly something we need to make sure that we work with our federal partners to fix that program. Thank you.
Leader Grant to further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We yield the remainder of our time.
Yielding back the remainder of their time, Representative Hunchowski, you're recognized to further our debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative Cassell in debate.
Representative Cassell, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For those of you that don't know me, I'm an attorney. I've specialized in this space for the last 13 years of a 16-year legal career. I want to talk to you about how my legal career started in this space. It was representing insurance companies. It was representing insurance companies in the big buildings with numerous floors occupied by lawyers. And I didn't spend much time getting to do that type of law on that side because I constantly was being pulled into partners' offices saying, "You're not billing the files enough. You're settling these cases too fast. We have to make our money also." But what's interesting about that side of the aisle is when insurance companies and insurance defense attorneys bill the insurance companies, that cost is factored in to people's premiums. That cost is something insurance companies get to bring to OIR and say, "We got to raise our rates. We're spending too much on our lawyers." For the last almost 10 years of my legal career, I have had the honor and privilege of representing probably a constituent in every single one of your districts. And let me tell you, they don't want to hire me. They've called their agent. They've tried to work it out. And I do everything in my power to help them avoid litigation. But there's a reason why the litigation statistics are what they are. And as an outsider practicing and participating in this process for 5 years before I was elected, I came to these offices to say, there's another side to look at. But all this body has done for 4 years is strip away consumer rights. We have lowered the time frame that they have to report claims. We have changed AOB litigation. We have changed attorney's fees. And every time I was in a committee, I was told, takes 2 to 3 years to see those results. We know litigation is down 30%. Have any of our constituents' rates been reduced today as we all sit here? They haven't. When we changed the AOB reforms, have rates gone down? They haven't. So how do we reduce rates? Where in our laws in Florida do we mandate that when an insurance company receives a savings, how does that get passed back to a consumer? Well, it's in the reinsurance costs. And for who I have a lot of respect for, Chair Rommel, to say, Well, I don't know how the private reinsurance market works. Well, I do, because I've sat on boards where all stakeholders are at the table and reinsurance is there. And the way we stabilize the reinsurance market is through capacity and through availability. And the private reinsurance market and our rating agents to ensure our federally backed mortgages are protected so our homeowners are meeting their requirements are going to require our insurance companies to have a reinstatement layer and to cover events that are more than just that are non-named events for those severe convective storms that our constituents face, for those hail events, for those bad summer storms that we're all accustomed to. So guess what? This FORA program doesn't provide for either of those. And when I asked Chair Leak, what is the goal of this bill yesterday in Commerce? The response was to stabilize the market. This doesn't stabilize it, ladies and gentlemen. What's going to happen is now we've given another $1 billion. That doesn't fix the problem. That still requires our insurance companies to fulfill these two mandatory requirements. Well, when you piecemeal a car, it's more expensive. When you piecemeal any consumer product, it's going to be more expensive. So guess what? I promise you, FORA isn't going to result in any rate savings and any savings to the insurance companies that by law are going to get passed down to the consumer. And it won't stabilize the market because, as we saw with Southern Fidelity, whose report we finally received to tell us why they went insolvent, guess what one of the main reasons was? The inability to fulfill their 2022 reinsurance capacity. FORA is not going to help insurance companies fulfill that capacity. We needed to add the reinstatement portion and the non-named weather storms. So there's not stabilizing the market. Well, let's talk about our consumers. My colleagues and I have been vilified. We have been made to be the villains, those of us that help everyday Floridians. But let me tell you, to Mr. St. Cyrin, who had a Hurricane Irma claim, whose home's not located in the best neighborhood, who recently had lost his wife to cancer, who had 4 children to take care of as rain was pouring in his home. And his insurance company, after a hurricane, said, there was no wind-created event. I am a superhero to him. And let me tell you why. Because I spent almost 2 years fighting an insurance company to prove everything they had in their claim file. All of the information that's kept private, that's kept confidential, that I don't get access to as a lawyer. Years fighting to get it, and I got it, and I won. And I'm a superhero to him. But let me tell you, today, after this bill, I won't be able to represent Mr. St. Cyrin and his family. Because why? Sure, are attorney's fees still available? Sure. But when a $30,000 case, when somebody who doesn't live in a mansion on Sanibel Beach, doesn't have the ability to pay an hourly rate, when they come to me and say, I live in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, my bathroom's not working, my insurance company denied my claim telling me this was pre-existing, they've never told me there were problems with my plumbing when they inspected it. My client for 2 years had to have a makeshift outhouse for her 3 children to shower and go to the bathroom while we fought her insurance company and won. And guess what? I won't be able to represent her after this bill. You want to know why? Because an insurance company is going to fight me for 2 years. In those big buildings with floors of lawyers, when they pass those rates on back to the consumer through their premium increases, they pay them whatever they want for as long as they want. There's a book. I highly recommend you all read it. It's called Delay, Deny, Defend. It's what they do. And if you can't hire a lawyer, despite what was presented, subsection KK, lines 2246 of this bill, now citizens, policyholders who are going to be paying more than the private marketplace, who are going to be required to have flood insurance, now, when they are making a claim for water damage against citizens, has the burden of proving that damage was not caused by flood. Burden of proof sounds like a legal term to me. Well, where are they getting their lawyer? Ladies and gentlemen, I can't summarize to you in 5 minutes what a 13-year legal career looks like and the stories that I have. And this marketplace needs help. But you're not stabilizing the marketplace through FORA. You're not putting money back in your consumers' pockets. We are being told that maybe in the future they'll see something with no guarantee. And you're taking away everything they have to hold them accountable. Please vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Members, while we make a transition to the next segment, Representative Lopez V has an announcement and a recognition. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, we have someone visiting from my community who is a very dear, dear friend from what we know is the city of Coral Gables, or the City Beautiful. Please help me in welcoming the mayor of Coral Gables, Carlos Lago, right up here. Thank you, Carlos.
Welcome to the Florida House. Representative Honchowski, you have 9 seconds left on the clock.
Ooh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield our time in its entirety back to the chair.
In its entirety, meaning the rest of the segments or the 9 seconds?
I was told that's what it means, in its entirety. Back.
Give Representative Honchowski a round of applause. The question now remains, Leader Grant, will you rise to the occasion?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and let me congratulate Representative Honchowski for her tremendous job as a rookie managing the floor debate on the Democratic side.
Let's give her a round of applause.
And with that, we yield the remainder of our time in entirety.
Leader Grant, yielding the remainder of his time in entirety, and there's no further debate. Representative Rommel, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank Speaker Renner, Senate President Pasadoma, and Governor DeSantis for actually having the courage to call a special session to address a situation that I believe everybody in this room understands is a crisis. I also want to thank the staff. The staff over the last 10 days have been getting input from all sides, making sure that the bill is in the proper structure legally. And for those that are new, when something like this happens, they're probably working 18, 20 hours a day. I want to thank all of them. They've done an amazing job. For those that don't think some of us up here care, that is not true. I could speak for many of the members, both Republican and Democrat, that are in this room, that have been infected by recent storms in a dramatic fashion. Many of our constituents don't have the right insurance. Some of them may have bad insurers. Some of them we've already found out. Unfortunately, when we see these storms, we get contractors from all over the country. Some of them have already taken their money and not repaired their home. some of the things that we've heard over the last 2 days talk about rates, lawsuits, and other things that truly affect the rates that people pay. I just want to touch on a few things that nobody's talked about, and they're at this macroeconomic level that we all feel, but we don't know. Insurance markets, they're worldwide. Reinsurers are worldwide. Over the last year, the US dollar has strengthened, depending on the country, anywhere from 10 to 25%. So what that means, if you're a reinsurance company, bring in your dollars to the United States to help pay a claim, you're losing money just coming into the United States. We've all seen in Florida, and we talk about it, and all sides, we talk about affordability for everything that we buy, from automobiles to eggs, to chicken, to milk, to gasoline, to homes, to rents. There's been a hyperinflation in the United States and worldwide for the last year and a half, and it's not stopping. It's not stopping. So if the price of your eggs and chicken, automobile, and rent goes up, more than likely, insurance is going to go up too, because they're facing the same thing. We see higher wages, great for people, bad for pricing. In the bill, we all see some of the problems. And no matter what we do, there's some things that we're not going to be able to fix. And it's human nature. Human nature. In life, most people are good. I think everybody in this room is a good person. They're elected by their people. But we all know bad actors that take advantage of things that maybe aren't illegal, but they're wrong. They're wrong. We know there's insurance companies that are deniers. Deny, deny, deny. We've seen movies. We've seen movies that they keep pushing it off, pushing it off, pushing it off. And when there's limited competition, you have nowhere else to go. So you have to deal with bad actors. We've seen bad actors on the repair side. You're in the horrors. You're literally in the horrors. Your house is wrecked. Your business is wrecked. Because of the housing situation, you have no place to go. And somebody, you think it's an angel, shows up at your door and goes, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. Sign this. And you think most people in the world are good-natured people. And, you know, we've seen people in disastrous times when some people go above and beyond in helping communities. I know in our community, we've seen people all over the world. We've seen the governor's wife start a private fund to help people that are in that situation where their insurance isn't covering them. And people are generous, but unfortunately, human nature, we can't fix human nature. No matter what we do, there's going to be bad actors. There's going to be bad roofers. There's going to be bad lawyers. We need good lawyers to go after the bad actors, but we need them. But unfortunately, there's still going to be bad ones. No matter what we do in here to try to encourage both sides to go to the table to negotiate in good faith, there's going to be something in there that people that are craftier than me, maybe bad actors, they're going to figure out whether it's the insurance side, the attorney side, the contractor side.
Representative Ron, I'll ask you to bring it in for a landing.
All right. So we've all seen the reports from the doctors. I've been filing insurance bills for the last 5 years. We have definitely made improvements. And for my friends that have recognized that HB 76 has definitely helped improve the market, I don't know the exact vote count, but I don't think everybody voted for that 2 years ago. So if you see the improvements that we made then, trust us. We're not trying to harm anybody. We are trying to fix the market. As legislators, sometimes we have to make really, really difficult decisions. It's not going to fix everything. Some people may feel a little bit more pain. But if we don't fix this, we're all going to feel a lot more pain. And with that, I ask you for favorable support.
Representative Rommel, having closed on this bill, question now recurs on the final passage of CSB 2A, the clerk will unlock the machine and the members will proceed to vote. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Clerk will lock the machine and announce the vote.
84 yeas, 33 nays, Mr. Speaker.
Show the bill passes. Show the bill passes. The clerk will read the next bill.
By Senator Hudson, Senate Bill 4A, a bill to be entitled an act relating to disaster relief.
Representative McLean, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, as we all know, Florida was impacted by 2 hurricanes this fall that caused widespread damage and destruction. Senate Bill 4A contains a number of disaster relief elements with focus on relief for damage caused by Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. First, the bill contains a provision that will provide for property tax refunds for owners of residential properties that are rendered uninhabitable for more than 30 days as a result of the damage. The refund will be proportional to the portion of the year that the property was uninhabitable. The bill also extends certain property tax deadlines and discounts for owners of property destroyed or rendered uninhabitable due to the hurricanes. Another provision of the bill relates to FEMA public assistance grants to local governments. The bill authorizes the Division of Emergency Management to pay on behalf of eligible local governments their required 1/2 local match needed to secure funding from FEMA. Local governments must agree to spend an equal amount of funds on further disaster recovery or mitigation activities. Grants are allocated on a first come, first served basis. In addition, for fiscal year 2022-23, $350 million will be appropriated for this, and the funds will be available for 5 years. The bill provides $150 million to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation for affordable housing hurricane recovery efforts. $60 million must be used to assist persons with repair or replacement of housing and relocation costs. From these funds, $25 million will be used to help homeowners to pay for insurance deductibles. $90 million must be used to fund the rental recovery loan program. It was a program that was created in 2006 to provide affordable rental units needed to promote the housing recovery needs of local communities. The bill provides $100 million to the Department of Environmental Protection to supplement the existing beach management and erosion control program for beaches impacted by Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. The bill also creates 2 new programs. First, the Hurricane Restoration Reimbursement Grant Program is created to provide grants to certain homeowners, cooperatives, and condominium associations to mitigate for coastal beach erosion. Cost sharing by the owner is required, with the state providing a dollar-for-dollar match provided to the owner with a maximum of $150,000 in state funding toward the actual costs. Grants are allocated on a first-come, first-served basis. $50 million is appropriated to DEP for this program. Second, the Hurricane Stormwater and Wastewater Assistance Grant Program provide financial assistance to eligible local governments for the remediation of damage to stormwater and wastewater systems caused by the hurricanes. Grants are capped at $10 million. For fiscal year 22-23, $100 million is appropriated to DEP for this program. Finally, the bill creates the Florida Emergency Management Assistance Foundation as a direct support organization of the Division of Emergency Management to provide assistance, funding, and support to the division in its disaster response, recovery, and relief efforts for natural emergencies. The foundation will be governed by a 5-member board. The director of the Division of Emergency Management will appoint those members, and the foundation will operate under a contract with DEM. The foundation will be repealed on December 31st of 2024 unless this legislature saves it from repeal. That is the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Representative McLean, having explained the bill, floor is open for questions. Any questions of the sponsor? Questions of the sponsor? Representative Cross, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chair McLean, for bringing this bill forward. My first question is related to the reimbursement-based grant program for property owners to mitigate for coastal beach erosion on line 450. We know that there's a need to renourish on a consistent basis because sand moves, particularly on our barrier islands. I've also heard from a lot of municipalities in my county about how difficult it has been to get the quantity of high quality sand that they need. So if you could just, with that in mind, explain a little bit about the rationale of issuing these reimbursements to the individual property owners that may struggle to complete a logistically tricky program, rather than increase the funding levels for the municipalities that may be able to implement larger and longer lasting projects at scale. Thank you.
Representative McLean, you're recognized for a response.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the issue was that it's important for all beaches to be able to be restored. Certainly some homeowners can probably move a little faster than the local government might be able to go ahead and get something remediated.
Representative Cross for a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My second question relates to the Public Assistance Program grants on line 264. The language states that the local governments who are getting this match from the state for these federal funds can use this towards, or are required to use it towards, future disaster recovery or mitigation. Can you share a few examples of what may be included, and specifically speak to whether a local municipality may be able to use that money towards a renewable energy project, say putting solar installations on a hurricane shelter, or if that could be used towards green infrastructure and restoring some of our coastal wetland systems?
Representative McLean for a response.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if any of those were contemplated, as it relates to green energy or some of those types of things. Certainly any historic projects that would have been done in the past would be something that I think we'd be looking to, that DEP would be looking to do.
Representative Cross for another question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My final question related to the affordable housing for hurricane recovery appropriations, beginning on line 414. Do you foresee any restrictions on the location of homes that could qualify for this assistance? For example, if a property has had repetitive flood damage prior to Hurricane Ian or Hurricane Nicole, or if it is in a coastal high hazard area, would repair or replacement of those structures still be an option?
Representative McLean for a response.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, the program will be administered by a Florida Housing Finance Program Corporation. I think just from a practical perspective, you're not going to, even if you were to rebuild on a property of kind of what you're talking about, there are different restrictions on doing that now, and I think those restrictions would be in play.
Follow up.
No further questions. Thank you, Speaker.
No further questions. Representative Escamani, you're recognized in questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker and Chair. I asked plenty of questions yesterday, so I will not repeat myself, but I know the bill had one committee stop after I saw it with you in Ways and Means. Did anything change with the reimbursement of property taxes, the refunds that consumers will be able to apply for? My understanding is that when the bill was in Ways and Means, the local governments would be covering the cost of that. Did that change at all between Ways and Means to the floor?
Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, it did not.
Follow up. No follow up. Other questions of the sponsor? Other questions of the sponsor? You're going to let him off that easy. No questions of the sponsor. Are there any amendments?
None on the desk, Mr. Speaker.
Show the bill rolled over to the third reading. Representative McLean, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the rules be waived and SB 4A be read a third time by title and placed on final passage.
All in favor say yay. All opposed say no. Show the bill adopted. Read the bill for the third time by title.
By Senator Hudson, Senate Bill 4A, a bill to be entitled an act relating to disaster relief.
Are there any amendments?
None on the desk, Mr. Speaker.
Members, we're going into structured debate on SB 4A. Debate will be limited to 10 minutes per side in 10-minute increments. Total debate time not to exceed 20 minutes. Reverend Hushosky, you're recognized to begin debate, and the clerk will start the debate clock whenever you tell me to start.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Skidmore, you're
Thank-
recognized
thank
from
you for
Representative
that, Mr.
Hunchowski's desk.
We yield the remainder of the time.
Having yielded the remainder of the time, Leader Grant, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please recognize as a proponent of the bill Representative Cross?
Representative Cross, you're recognized as a proponent of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, thank you, Chair McLean. It is clear that 2022 was an incredibly difficult year for our state. We all watched as the devastation and heartache endured by our fellow Floridians, including some members of our own chambers, as they lost their homes and their loved ones during Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. I appreciate this bill helps to repair some of the financial damage for both homeowners and municipalities impacted by these hurricanes. And for this, I commend the sponsors in both chambers. There are some very good ideas that I look forward to us fleshing out more during the regular session. As I mentioned in the questions, I recognize that the goal of cutting some of the red tape by supporting homeowners directly through the Hurricane Restoration Reimbursement Grant Program could be advantageous. However, beach renourishment projects are costly and complex, and they're often more effective at a larger scale. Local municipalities are already finding it difficult to obtain the suitable quality materials they need for their renourishment projects and to maintain our tourism industry. I do worry that these homeowner reimbursement grants will foster more of a piecemeal approach where only a few homes or condominiums will be able to benefit from this, decreasing the overall effectiveness of this program. I would encourage that the use of the public assistance grant programs for funds work to increase renewable energy capacity or green infrastructure projects. This bill does come at a significant price tag, a little over $750 million for us as a state, plus additional and unknown costs to our local governments to provide tax relief that is certainly commendable and appropriate right now. But as we see more people moving to Florida, our disaster relief costs will continue to rise. And I would have us recognize that investing earlier in green infrastructure by planting mangroves, restoring wetlands, and building oyster bars, as well as increasing our renewable energy capacity, is a fiscally responsible choice that will pay dividends for decades to come. It certainly is our duty to make whole the people and communities that were devastated by Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. For that reason, I am up on the bill today, and I look forward to seeing the good work of the Select Committee on Hurricane Resiliency and Recovery further expand on some of these ideas, and hope that we as a legislative body will take a strategic and proactive approach to minimizing future losses to our homes and businesses, our tourism industry, and the safety of our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. There's further debate. Representative Grant. Senator Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm about to utter some words that I never thought I would say on the floor of this House. So if lightning strikes this dome, it's my fault. Please recognize in debate Representative Yes Kamani as a proponent of this bill.
Representative Escamani, you are recognized in debate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. It is indeed a Christmas miracle, so thank you. Members, I do rise in support of this good bill, and I gave Chair McLean thorough questioning in committee, and so I want to make sure folks know that he has my full support on this piece of policy. Representative Cross did an amazing job in outlining just some of the long-term work we need to do to be proactive versus reactive, and I'm grateful to be appointed to that same committee, and I look forward to championing these issues alongside in a bipartisan way because we love our great state. But Florida is ground zero for the impacts of hurricanes, for the impact of rising sea levels. And so we must continue to do proactive work. Now, I do want to outline one area of concern that I have is with the DSO created in this bill, because my understanding is that 501c3s are typically not covered under sunshine unless explicitly made clear. And so I want to make sure that the nonprofit we're creating in this bill to help raise money for emergency management operates with transparency in mind. So perhaps we can continue that conversation and check in on it through the auditing committee to make sure that funds are being spent appropriately and in the best interests of our constituents. I had an amendment that I had to withdraw because it was out of order, but it was going to integrate eviction and foreclosure protections in the face of a declaration of disaster. I know many of my colleagues in the Fort Myers area experienced this firsthand with constituents who were being evicted right after the hurricane came. And we also had constituents that were unable to receive rental assistance because the counties that typically deliver it were too busy during hurricane response. And so I do think that any disaster, we have to think about housing security and ensuring that folks have time to reset until they're able to restore their income so that they don't lose their home in addition to experiencing a disaster. And with that, I also just want to stress the importance of equity. Part of this program has language around prioritizing low and moderate families for one of the sources of funding, but it also says that it operates on a first come, first served basis. I'm curious how the agency is going to wrestle with those two priorities, but we need to be intentional making sure that communities who might not have internet access, who might not know what the legislature is, or realize what these programs do, they also have access to apply and receive funds. And so for that, I'm proud to support this policy, and I encourage all my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Leader Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The miracles continue. Please recognize Representative Joseph.
Representative Joseph, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I just wanted to state publicly, because we talked about it in committee, making sure that we as the state figure out a way to support the local government financial burden imposed by this bill, which disproportionately impacts, I believe, some of the local governments as well as school boards. So as we're doing this program, I look forward to working with my colleagues across the aisle to make sure that we can do our part as a state to help fund that particular mandate for this program. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Leader Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yield the remainder of the time.
Having yielded back the remainder of the time and the time having now expired, Representative McLean, you are recognized to close on your beloved bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if I need to ask permission, but I'm probably going to need somebody to pinch hit for my close for me because I'm speechless. Members, thank you for all of the questions yesterday in committee and certainly for your support today. I appreciate that. It is a $751.5 million relief package that fulfills a lot of immediate needs of our citizens. We're going to give a good amount of money to our local governments to help with their efforts. And I think we're codifying a little bit of language that would help us moving forward. And while we didn't answer every policy question in this bill, that was not the intent of the bill. The intent of the bill was to get relief to our citizens. And I think this bill obviously does that. Speaker, thank you, Senate President Passidomo, and certainly the governor and his office in creating this package. Members, I would ask for your favorable support. Thank you.
Having closed on the bill, the question now recurs on final passage of SB 4A. The clerk will unlock the machine. Members will proceed to vote. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Clerk will lock the machine and announce the vote.
116 yeas, Mr. Speaker.
Show the bill passes. Congratulations. McLean, congratulations on your work on this bill. Well done. Read the next bill.
By Senator DeSigley, Senate Bill 6A, a bill to be entitled an act relating to toll relief.
Representative Basada Cabrera, you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill authorizes the Florida Turnpike Enterprise to establish a 12-month toll relief program for customers using a 2-axle vehicle with a Florida-issued transponder who use Florida's Turnpike system and all other toll facilities in the state. Between January 1st, 2023 and December 31st, 2023, customers who use a Florida-issued transponder who record 35 or more toll transactions per calendar month on the Florida Turnpike and all other Florida toll facilities will receive a 50% credit issued to their account. Credits will be posted to their account the month after the credit is earned. This bill appropriates $500 million from the General Revenue Fund to the State Transportation Trust Fund for the department to make reimbursements to the Turnpike Enterprise and other tolling facilities for account credits issued for commuter toll relief. That is the bill.
Are there questions of the sponsor? Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks for this good bill. I just noticed during committee that it's only for folks who have a transponder. So I'm curious, is there any discount for folks who don't but might want to buy one so they can also benefit from the savings?
Representative Basada Cabrera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So those who would qualify for this would have to have a transponder. It can be a Sun Pass, a Leeway Pass, an Easy Pass. Any of those would qualify. So I urge everyone to get a transponder so they can take advantage of the program.
Further questions of the sponsor? Representative Woodson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Rep. Dami Buceta, it's great to see you again. I know we have done a lot of work together, but this is a great bill and I'm in support of the bill. My only question to you, how would that, have you given any consideration to how it will impact local government to receive funding from this type of revenue?
Representative Basada Cabrera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So it won't have an impact on them. They will be made whole by the state and be reimbursed. The only impact would be to our hardworking Floridians who would get the 50% credit.
Further questions of the sponsor? Further questions? Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In regards to this bill, how will this ensure that citizens are getting the benefits of this wonderful bill and not commercial enterprises?
Representative Basada Cabrera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this is for private enterprise or private citizens only. That language is in the bill. So it would be any citizen who has that transponder would qualify.
Further questions? Additional questions of the sponsor? Representative Arrington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, Representative. Can you tell me, please, why the bill allows for appropriated funds to be used for additional advertising? Considering the purpose of the bill, shouldn't all the money go back to the taxpayers for discounts? And shouldn't the discount program go ahead and be published with like FDOT's billing and stuff that they send out already?
Representative Basada Cabrera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So that language is in current statute already. We want to make sure that all of our hardworking Floridians know about this program and that they all take advantage of the program and they can get that 50% rebate. There are plenty of Floridians out there who are spending hundreds of dollars a month and could end up having thousands of dollars of savings a year, a huge impact to their pockets. And we want to make sure that everyone has the knowledge of this program.
Questions of the sponsor? Additional questions? Seeing none, are there amendments?
On the desk, Mr. Speaker.
Read the first amendment.
Representative Driscoll offered the following amendment with title amendment, barcode 263833, remove line 103 and insert an amendment.
Leader Driscoll, you're recognized to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment prohibits the Florida Department of Transportation, the Turnpike Enterprise, or any toll road agencies from naming or promoting any elected official, politician, their position, or namesake in the advertising for the toll relief program, because if we're going to use funds for advertising, they should be used to inform consumers and not for the personal aggrandizement of any one politician, and that is the amendment.
Are there questions of the sponsor? Questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, is there debate? Representative Escamani in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to thank our leader for this great amendment. If you look at the staff analysis, the estimated cost by FDOT is about $450 million-ish. And so the appropriation is $500 million. So I share the concern that some of these dollars might be used to promote politicians when really every penny of it should go directly to people, not as a political electioneering, in our roadways. And so I encourage folks, if you are fiscally conservative, want money in the pockets of our constituents, you support this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate? Further debate? Representative Campbell in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really believe this is a great bill. When I read it, I was quite intrigued about how this was getting into play. The only thing is that I would be more concerned about how do we make sure that transponders in rental cars are not being used instead of for the private citizens. And so just figuring out a way that we keep that in check. I really love this bill, so thank you for this presentation, and I'm looking forward to voting up on this bill.
Any further debate? Seeing none, you're recognized to close on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, as Democrats, I want to be clear, our caucus does support giving consumers this tax break. Let me be unequivocally clear about that. But as Representative Escamani stated, who it's been a pleasure with partnering on this good amendment, the cost will be about $458.7 million. That still leaves a little over $40 million to go towards promotional materials and advertising. Actually don't even think we need to promote it at all. I think the discount will show up, or the rebate will show up in people's bills, and they'll just be really glad to see it. I think that from what I understand, FDOT already has the resources internally to make this happen, and they probably don't need the extra money that we're giving them to do this. And so if we're going to use millions for promotional dollars, really, I feel like that should go to the consumers. But if we're not going to do that, what we need to make sure is that it can't be used to prop up politicians. And I think we've just seen that too often. I've seen it all across the state, and I don't want it to happen here with our hard-earned taxpayer dollars. So for that reason, I would support you, I would ask you to support this amendment and vote up. Thank you.
Having closed on our amendment, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying yay. Yay. Opposed, no? No. Show the amendment fails. Read the next amendment.
None on the desk, Mr. Speaker.
Show the bill rolled over for third reading. Representative Posada Cabrera, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the rules be waived and SB 6A be read a third time by title and placed on final passage.
Representative Posada Cabrera moves that the rules be waived and SB 6A be read a third time by title and placed on final passage. All in favor signify by saying yay. Yay. Opposed, no. Show the motion is adopted. Read the bill a third time by title.
By Senator DeSigley, Senate Bill 6A, a bill to be entitled an act relating to toll relief.
Are there any additional amendments?
None on the desk, Mr. Speaker.
Members, we're going to be going into structured debate again on SB 6A. We have 10 minutes per side in 10-minute increments. The total debate time not to exceed 20 minutes. Representative Hunchofsky.
Welcome to Palm Bay Live, celebrating 2 years in business.